I found two brothers named Jiawen and Galen. Both are skilled builders with high loyalty to me. I learned that they're grateful because I took in their elderly parents during the war. Without my help, their whole family would have starved. When I asked if they'd work for me, Jiawen offered to join my guard right away. But I shook my head. I didn't need them as soldiers. I needed them to build ships, big ones, strong enough to sail the Rima River. Jiawen looked worried. They'd worked at a shipyard before, but never built anything large. The Rima River is famously wild and fast. Still, I told them I believed in them. Whatever they needed, my steward Ankro would provide it. Success or failure, I wouldn't blame them. That fired them up. What man doesn't dream of conquering a great river? The Rima stretches over 10,000 miles, from the Rima Kingdom in the north all the way to the Western Ocean. Building a proper shipyard would take years, even with enough workers and gold. I couldn't wait that long, so I came up with a simpler plan first. I used my griffins to fly soldiers across the mountain. The distance was short. Each round trip took less than 10 minutes. In one day, the griffins carried over 800 fully armed guards to the other side. My goal is to eventually send 10,000 guards across and conquer the lizard folk tribes living in those mountains. With the church protecting my territory back home, and the beast folk too afraid to cause trouble, I had nothing to worry about. The land on the other side of the mountain was completely different. Cold and wet, full of thick jungle, swarming with mosquitoes, venomous snakes, and wild beasts. From the way birds scattered constantly, I could tell there were plenty of predators hiding in there. I wondered if the lizard folk had noticed us arriving so openly. But the nearest tribe was still far away, and lizard folk aren't known for being clever. Even if they did come, they're just scattered settlements, no match for my trained soldiers. Something else crossed my mind. This land sits on the North Continent, cut off by towering mountains and the Rima River. The beast folk don't bother farming or exploring, they just raid. Could it be that I'm the first person to discover this place? After all, who else has griffins and happens to be right here? My soldiers didn't complain about the harsh conditions. Most of them were veterans who survived the last battle with me. They cleared a campsite, set up fires to keep the wild beasts away, and pitched simple tents. That first night was rough. Roaring echoed through the darkness all night long, some of it terrifyingly loud. We suspected there might be creatures far bigger than leopards or tigers out there. Maybe saber-toothed cats. Maybe giant serpents. Normally, I can't just invade other lands without reason. It would hurt the church's reputation. But this situation is different. Most lizard folk are too stupid to be recognized by the beast folk nations. Over 2/3 of them aren't even considered official citizens. What I'm doing here counts as pioneering, exploring unclaimed territory. That's completely legal. Nobody knows what lies beyond these massive mountain ranges that stretch across the borders of every continent. A strange force prevents anything from flying over them. Even frost dragons get their wings frozen at high altitude and fall from the sky. It's like a giant cage trapping every race on their own land. But within each continent, there's still plenty of unexplored territory. If I happen to find a civilization that doesn't know about the church, I can conquer them freely. And even if they do know, I can just pretend I didn't realize. By the time they complain to the church, I'll act surprised and stop, but I'm keeping every bit of land I already took. Unless someone can beat the church in a fight, they have no say in the matter. I sent 10,000 guards across the mountain. After some time clearing land, they built a proper camp with wooden houses. The nearest lizard tribe was still over 100 miles away, completely unaware of us. I didn't rush things. Instead, I brought nearly 10,000 civilians across too. They volunteered because I promised them land rights in the new territory. Once they heard it was just one mountain away from Luiska, they agreed quickly. The dock was already taking shape. Once we had real ships, travel between the two territories would be easy. Those poor griffins carried over 20,000 people across the mountain. I felt a little bad for them, but they got good food, so they stayed obedient. Still, I decided to stop pushing them for now. 20,000 people was enough to test the waters. Then one sunny afternoon, my soldiers brought me interesting news. My lord, we caught a giant bird. Bird person, a flying beast folk? That was completely unexpected. No known beast folk species could fly. This meant I'd truly discovered a new continent with unknown races. They took me to see the creature. She had a human body but bird wings instead of arms, and huge sharp talons. From her build, she was female. She wore ugly cloth strips covering herself, Clearly her civilization wasn't very advanced. That made sense. Without hands, only wings, they couldn't build much. Her wing had a bloody hole from an arrow. She looked pale and weak, huddled in a corner of her cage like a wounded bird, watching me with wary eyes. Her name was Timmy. Her combat and intelligence scores were low, only 30 each. But her overall rating was A, which surprised me. That meant her special talents were exceptional. She had two, flight and nightmare transformation. That second one caught my attention immediately. I needed to bring her back to Luiska for observation. My soldiers told me they'd spotted her flying overhead while clearing forest. They thought she was just a large bird and shot her down for a meal, only to discover she was a beast folk. I ordered them to watch for more of her kind, report anything unusual, and reinforce her cage. Soon the griffins carried her back to my estate in Luiska. During the whole journey, she kept staring at my griffins, opening her mouth weakly as if trying to communicate with them. I listened carefully but couldn't understand a single thing she was saying. I called a priestess to heal the bird girl's wounds. When the priestess saw Timmy, her eyes went wide. She'd never seen anything like her. Still, she cast her healing spell quickly. The wing healed and scarred over, but the feathers where the arrow punched through wouldn't grow back. The bare pink spot on her wing actually looked kind of cute. I tried to pay the priestess, but she refused completely. She bowed and told me my fiancé is their holy maiden, and working for me was an honor. That made me realize I probably don't know enough about my fiancé's influence. After sending the priestess away, I called Ankiyuna to try communicating with Timmy. Ankiyuna has a beast taming skill, so maybe it would work. I also brought Reina, the little dragon girl, along for safety. With her fighting power, I didn't need to worry about Timmy attacking anyone. Ankiyuna tried talking to Timmy, but got nothing back except threatening wing flaps. Her beast taming skill didn't work. Timmy wasn't really a beast. Then Reina spoke up. Master, let Shalise try. She knows many ancient languages. That was a great idea. I'd forgotten that my little elf administrator Shalise had a talent for ancient languages on top of her amazing political skills. When she arrived, she looked half asleep. No surprise, since I dumped nearly all the territory's paperwork on her. She stumbled into Reina's arms, mumbled her greetings, and curtsied politely despite being exhausted. I felt a little guilty. Maybe I should give her a day off? But then all that paperwork would land on me. I dropped that thought fast. The moment Shalise saw Timmy, her sleepy eyes snapped wide open. A little hair antenna seemed to pop up on her head and wiggle. Is this someone from the Vastaya tribe? I thought they went extinct. She walked to the cage and spoke a few words in a language I couldn't understand. Timmy instantly perked up, hearing someone speak Vastayan. They talked for a while, and then Shalise reported back to me. Timmy had run away from home. She was shocked to meet humans, a species she thought was long extinct. She demanded to be released, warning that her father is the tribal chief. He'd send the entire tribe to find her. Over 10,000 elite Vastayan warriors who can transform into nightmare fighters. In that form, they feel no pain and their combat power surges. According to ancient texts, a group of nightmare warriors once killed a giant dragon, though Shalise noted that claim still needs verification. I patted Shalise on the head for her good work. She squinted happily, said she was glad to help, and headed back to her endless pile of paperwork. After she left, I stared at Timmy and frowned. My soldiers had accidentally captured the chief's daughter. That complicated things. Timmy didn't look anything like a human. Bird feathers covered her face. She had wings instead of arms and talons instead of feet. But her appearance wasn't my concern. If her tribe really had 10,000 nightmare warriors, that was a serious threat to my expansion. Releasing her was out of the question. That would expose our presence, and she might lead her people straight to us. On the other hand, keeping her gave me a valuable bargaining chip if fighting broke out. One thing puzzled me, though. If she could transform into a nightmare warrior, why didn't she do it when she was shot down and captured? For now, I ordered extra bows and arrows sent across the mountain. If the Vastaya came looking for their princess, my soldiers needed to be ready. Against a flying race without heavy armor, arrows would be devastating. In a couple of days, I'd send scouts deeper into the mountains to find exactly where this tribe was hiding. A month passed after capturing Timmy, and no word came from the Vastaya tribe. Good. Meanwhile, I made sure every guard on the other side of the mountain had a longbow and a full quiver. If the Vastaya showed up looking for a fight, my soldiers would be ready. Every day, I flew over on my griffin to check on the new territory. The 10,000 civilians I brought over had already built their own wooden houses. There was plenty of open ground near the mountain base, though clearing it was rough work. Poisonous snakes and insects kept biting people during the land clearing. I stationed 2 priestesses there to heal and purify for free. I wanted my people to work without worry. Those priestesses refused my gold again. I had to practically force 100 coins into each of their hands and threaten to get angry before they'd take them. I know I'm basically living off my fiancé's influence, but I still want people to see me as generous, not some stingy noble. Timmy's cage was placed near my griffins. Ankiyuna told me Timmy kept desperately trying to talk to them, but my griffins ignored her completely. They only liked Ankiyuna. That raised my guard. If the Vastaya tribe can communicate with griffins, they might be raising griffins of their own. That would change everything. Even without armor, griffins are incredibly powerful. It's why they're Noran's elite force. The best counter to griffins is magic. Luckily, under Narencel's teaching, my territory now had over 100 low-level mages and about 10 mid-level ones. Once my mage corps was fully formed, combined with griffin cavalry and heavy cavalry, my battlefield strength would jump dramatically. I went to see Narencel and asked him to move to the new territory to protect my people there. He agreed without hesitation. With his power and his apprentices stationed across the mountain, my new land finally had magical defense. Meanwhile, I learned some interesting things about this world's history. There are 4 main gods: the goddess of light, the god of magic, the god of battle aura, and the god of the undead. The first 2 are still active. Priestesses exist because of the light goddess, and all magic works through divine blessing. But the god of battle aura and the god of the undead vanished long ago. Legend says they fought each other and disappeared. Before that, warriors could channel battle aura to strengthen their bodies and weapons. A powerful aura warrior could make an ordinary sword deadlier than a magic weapon. But battle aura died out over 1,000 years ago. The title, Sword Saint, still exists, but without true aura, no one really deserves it. The real sword saints recorded in ancient texts were so powerful that even grand mages would flee from them. Some believe those towering mountain ranges sealing off the continents might be connected to those 2 fallen gods. Whatever happened between them reshaped the entire world. Spring turned to summer. The new territory across the mountain was cooler than Luiska, which my armored soldiers appreciated. The settlement was taking shape, no city walls yet, but we had plenty of watchtowers. After catching Timmy, we hadn't seen any more bird people, and my guards were starting to forget about them. Narencel took charge of everything on that side. Life was hard, but the rewards were worth it. Early settlers would get the best land. Then one night, the watchtowers lit their warning fires. Torches appeared in the dark forest ahead. A huge force of lizard folk had crept right up to our position. They wore leather armor, carried curved swords, and stood over 2.5 meters tall, towering over even my Noran soldiers. The battle lasted several hours and ended with the lizard folk fleeing in chaos. They were bigger and stronger, sure, but my guards were veterans who'd fought fully armed beast folk before. Their weapons and equipment were far superior. After a few clashes, the enchanted long swords my soldiers carried cut right through the lizard folk's weapons. Even their mages couldn't break through. My men's insulated steel shields blocked every spell. The next morning, Narencel gave me the report. Over 1,000 lizard folk killed, 500 captured. On our side, only a few guards dead, those who got caught without armor during the surprise attack, and about a dozen wounded, already healed by the priestesses. I had plans for those prisoners. Eventually, I wanted to build a lizard folk settlement. A good lord should embrace diversity among his subjects. These lizard folk weren't smart, but they could fight. I'd already tamed 200 lizard folk slaves before, so I had experience. I bought slave collars from the merchant guild back in Luiska and had them locked around the prisoners' necks. Any hostile move, and the collar would kill them instantly. When we let them out of their cages, a few idiots charged at me screaming. They didn't make it 2 steps before their collars exploded their throats open. They dropped dead on the spot. After that, the rest got much quieter. I smiled at them calmly, which probably made me look even more terrifying. I tried speaking to them in the common tongue, but they just stared blankly. Good. That meant this really was undiscovered land. I'd brought Shalise along for exactly this reason. The poor girl was shaken by the bloody scene and clung to my leg, hiding her face. I patted her head until she calmed down enough to step forward. She spoke to them in lizard language. Most agreed to submit and begged me not to kill them. A few kept shouting defiantly. I glanced at my guards. They understood immediately, walked over, and executed the loudmouths on the spot. The resistance vanished. Don't even think about rebelling, I told them through Shaliz, or I'll happily send you to meet the great light goddess. Then I picked out 4 of the most timid-looking ones and had them tied up separately. I needed answers. Something made these lizard folk march 50 kilometers to attack us, and I intended to find out what. The interrogation of the lizard folk went quickly. They came from over 10 different tribes, so I questioned them separately. Once 4 prisoners gave matching answers, I had Shaliz write everything down. They'd actually spotted us a month ago. The strongest lizard folk tribe sounded the war horn and rallied more than 10 tribes to attack. Even the smallest tribe had over 10,000 members, and the most powerful one, the thorn lizard tribe, had 50,000. That matched my estimates. I also got useful information about the Vastaya. They live inside mountain caves and in treetop nests built on massive trees. That explained why I couldn't find them from the air on my griffin. I was probably exposing myself while they stayed hidden below the canopy. The Vastaya raise griffins and constantly clash with the lizard folk. Their nightmare warriors are stronger individually, but the lizard folk have the numbers and the toughness to hold their own. There are also goblins and gnomes living underground, occasionally surfacing to hunt the plentiful wildlife. Knowing all this, I felt confident. My guards' weapons and equipment were on a completely different level from these natives. Even with a physical disadvantage, we could hold our ground easily. If the lizard folk attacked again, they'd lose again. As for offense, I decided to wait. After winter, I'd recruit more guards and then bring proper justice to these lizard tribes. Meanwhile, back at the Magic Academy, things were getting complicated between Zaluka and Princess Ainwire. Ainwire had heard rumors that Zaluka and Yelena were growing close, and it worried her. Yelena was my fiancée, Ainwire's enemy. If Zaluka became too friendly with Yelena, would Zaluka still side with Ainwire when the time came? She tested Zaluka carefully, asking about her relationship with Yelena. Zaluka answered innocently that Yelena was a good little sister and she liked her a lot. Then Ainwire asked how Zaluka felt about their own friendship. Zaluka misread the whole thing. She thought Ainwire was just feeling insecure about being replaced as a best friend. She walked over and reassured her warmly that nothing would change between them. Ainwire relaxed a little. She figured Yelena was probably befriending Zaluka for her talent, same as herself. Despite approaching Zaluka with some political calculation, Ainwire's desire for real friendship was genuine. As a princess, everyone around her either bowed or flattered. No one was a true friend. Zaluka changed that. She even caught herself thinking that if one of them had been born a boy, she would have pursued Zaluka passionately. Their children would have been incredibly gifted in magic. Meanwhile, King Zeluk XIII was struggling badly. He forced his people to work over 12 hours a day, clearing land and farming, desperate to harvest enough wheat before autumn. Last winter nearly killed them from starvation, and he couldn't let that happen again. His people hated him for it, but he had an army to keep them in line. Honestly, the conditions weren't much better than living under beast folk rule. Duke Simon got bad news too. Prince Michel's betrayal was now public knowledge. Merchants from Rima and Yade spread the word everywhere. Everyone knew the third prince had opened the city gates to let the beast folk in and attack their own army from behind. The king's eldest son was still missing, dead or alive. Thinking about all that, Simon actually felt better about his own situation. At least his daughter was safe with me, possibly becoming my concubine someday. My connections with the church meant I'd survive this war. The Simon bloodline would carry on. Back in my territory, the shipyard was nearly finished. Jowen and Galen really were building geniuses. With my unlimited support and their talent, they'd completed it before summer's end. Now they could start on the actual ships. I bought them shipbuilding books from the Merchant Guild. With any luck, they'd have a river-worthy vessel by next spring. I kept wishing I could dig a tunnel straight through the mountain to connect my two territories. But without even steam engines in this world, that was pure fantasy. Ships on both sides of the mountain would have to do for now. Ankro reported that we'd recruited another 20,000 guards over the summer. Weapons and armor were running short, so I told him to use the older equipment we'd replaced. He'd also picked 10 squad leaders, the strongest fighters among our ranks, all with combat ratings between 60 and 70. I trusted his judgment completely. Ankro had grown tremendously. When I first met him, his combat rating was barely over 70. Now it was 90, with new talents in swordsmanship and shield use. His loyalty was a perfect 100. Since Akshin died, I'd been relying on him more and more, and he'd risen to the challenge. I checked my own stats afterward. All my training was paying off. My combat had reached 40, competitive with most soldiers now. Reina taught me fighting techniques, though some of her moves relied on dragonfolk's strength I simply didn't have. Still, she was patient, and I learned a lot. My strategy rating had climbed to 85 somehow, probably just from experience and age. On that hot summer day, I looked up at the blue sky and felt a strange ache. I missed you, Luna. I'd gotten so used to having that sweet girl take care of me. Without her around, every day felt a little too long. Autumn came, warmer than usual. Nasia had another breakthrough. She'd successfully created an agility potion. The little elf girl was beaming, her pointed ears twitching with excitement as she held up the glowing blue bottle. She told me there were no side effects on the test mice after a full week. That shocked me. The strength potion still had terrible side effects even after improvements. I only kept it for emergencies. But no side effects at all on this one. I needed proper testing. I picked 4 volunteers, 2 ordinary civilians, and 2 lizard folk slaves, all with loyalty at 80. The lizard folk started at 65 combat rating and jumped to 70 after drinking. The humans went from 25 to 35. The potion clearly worked better on weaker bodies. A few days later, I checked their stats again. The combat boost had faded, as expected. The side effects were minimal, just some weakness in the 2 humans. All within reason. But something else caught my eye. Their loyalty had jumped to 90. All 4 of them. I was absolutely certain it was 80 before. I hadn't done anything special for these people in the past few days. The only thing that changed was the potion. A strange thought formed in my mind. Timmy had been caged for months now. The bird girl who loved flying free was stuck staring at the sky she couldn't reach. She'd run far from home to avoid her duties as the young tribal chief. She had a history of disappearing. Last time she vanished for half a year, and her father actually held a funeral for her. So nobody would be searching for her anytime soon. Her days were dull. Griffins growled at her. Ankiyuna fed her 3 meals a day. That was about it. Today I brought Shalise to translate and Reina for safety. Through Shalise, I told Timmy I wanted friendship between our peoples and offered her a recovery potion as a gesture of goodwill. She screamed back that she'd never accept my apology and her tribe would never submit. She called it poison. I wasn't angry. I simply turned to Reina. Feed it to her. Reina opened the cage with one hand. Timmy felt the overwhelming pressure of a dragon-blooded warrior lock onto her. Reina's dangerous slit pupils radiating terror. Timmy recognized it instantly. This girl had pure white dragon blood in her veins. All resistance drained from Timmy's body. Reina poured the potion into her mouth. It was warm. It didn't taste bad, but tears rolled down Timmy's face from the humiliation. She closed her eyes in despair. Then Reina simply locked the cage again. Nothing else happened. I smiled and nodded. If this potion worked on Timmy the way it worked on the others, it would become my ultimate weapon. A potion that raises loyalty, something completely unheard of. 2 days after feeding Timmy the potion, I checked her stats. Her loyalty had jumped from 0 to 10. It actually worked. My heart raced. I kept going. Every 2 days, Reina would come and feed Timmy another dose. By the 9th visit, Timmy didn't even resist anymore. She opened her mouth before Reina could even open the cage door. Reina still went through the whole routine anyway, which left poor Timmy nearly in tears. After half a month, Timmy's loyalty hit 90. I only had 1 bottle left. I decided to start asking questions. I put on my friendliest face and asked through Shalise if she really was the chief's daughter. She answered without hesitation. Yes, she was his only daughter and the future heir of the tribe. Something had clearly shifted inside her. She couldn't even feel her own hatred fading away. I told her I was sorry for how my soldiers treated her and promised to release her in 2 days. I said I wanted to build friendship between our peoples and that I would never enslave the Vastaya. They'd have equal rights as my subjects. Of course, my words were contradictory. Friendship and my subjects don't exactly go together. But Timmy didn't notice. She just stared at me wide-eyed and asked if I'd really let her go. Once the last potion pushed her loyalty to 100, I kept my promise and freed her. She couldn't believe it. I even offered to have a griffin fly her back, but she politely declined, not wanting to trouble me. She called me, Mr. Linway, and thanked me sincerely. As I watched her fly away, I knew she'd become my perfect inside agent without even realizing it. If I ever conquered the Vastaya, she'd be the puppet leader everyone would trust. The disappointing part was that Nasia couldn't reproduce the loyalty effect. Only her first batch of agility potions had it. Every batch after that was just a normal agility potion. No matter how hard I pushed her to recreate it, she couldn't figure out what made the first batch special. I had to let it go for now. But I had something better to look forward to. Autumn was almost over, and Yelena had finished her church duties. She arrived at Luiska early. Linwei, she stood there in her white holy robes, her skin pale as jade, looking like a gentle angel. I pulled her into a hug, and she melted into my arms. Her warmth felt like home. She mentioned that last winter they hadn't managed to produce an heir, but she'd keep trying this year. Then she casually pointed to a small chest on her church carriage. It took 4 of my strongest guards to lift it down. When I opened it, a block of shining silver-white metal gleamed in the sunlight. Mithril, a head-sized chunk of mithril. This stuff is insanely rare. It bonds perfectly with magic. Even a tiny amount mixed into a weapon creates something devastatingly powerful. A piece this size was worth tens of millions in gold, if you could even find a seller. "Do you like it?" Yelena asked softly, her voice sweet and playful. "Like it?" I nodded, completely stunned. Did she just raid the church's secret vault for me? She pouted. "So you like the mithril more than me? Am I not cute enough?" I shook my head frantically. "You could give me the whole continent, and it still wouldn't be worth more than my fiancé." My rich girlfriend was truly something else. From what I learned through Shaliz and my own observations, the Vastaya aren't traditional beast folk. They're winged bird people who obsess over bloodline purity. Only the purest bloodlines can transform into the strongest nightmare warriors. The Thorn tribe, Timmy's tribe, is the most powerful, with over 50,000 members. All other Vastaya tribes combined add up to another 100,000. That's the entire Vastaya population on this continent. Each tribe governs itself. In Timmy's case, being the young chief meant she was expected to marry her own younger brother Tyr to produce children with the purest blood. That's what she was running away from when my soldiers shot her down. After I released her, Timmy flew back home. She'd read ancient books in her tribe's forgotten library, books describing the wider world beyond their mountains and the Rima River. Those books convinced her that her people were wrong to hide behind natural barriers and refuse to explore. She wanted to prove the outside world wasn't as terrifying as everyone believed. Meeting me and my people only strengthened that belief. For reasons she couldn't quite explain, she trusted me completely. She believed my promise of friendship. The loyalty potion had done its work perfectly, and she had no idea anything had changed inside her. When she returned, her brother Tyr noticed her injured wing immediately. She lied and said it was an accident. Tyr was young, only 15, but gentle and perceptive. He knew she was lying, but didn't push. He told her he'd try to convince their father to cancel their arranged marriage, worried she might do something reckless. But this time, Timmy surprised him. She told him she wanted to become chief. She wanted to lead the Vastaya out of their isolation. Tyr went quiet, then said he'd support whatever she decided, even though becoming chief meant she'd have to marry him after all. Her father Tiwa was shocked when she announced it. He'd spoiled her because she reminded him of his late wife. He never expected her to actually accept responsibility. But when he saw she was serious, he smiled with genuine pride and told her she'd always been his greatest source of joy. Timmy felt guilty looking at her father's happy face. She was doing this not for tradition, but to change everything he believed in. Still, she was convinced that if the Thorn tribe stayed trapped behind mountains and rivers forever, they would eventually die out. My pawn was moving exactly where I needed her to go. After autumn arrived, the lizard folk got bolder. They kept raiding us, and they kept losing. After capturing several batches of prisoners, I confirmed these lizard folk had zero connection to the beast folk empire in the south. That made me much less cautious. I now had over 2,000 lizard folk prisoners, which meant I needed more manpower. I shipped another 20,000 guards across the mountain by Griffin. My territory back home had over 300,000 people now, with more refugees arriving daily. Once winter passed, I'd launch a proper campaign against the lizard tribes. On a quiet afternoon, I reached for my tea and found my cup empty. Before I could call Elialu, Yelena was already there with the teapot. She always took over the caretaking whenever she was around. I held her soft hand and realized for the first time just how lucky I was. Without her, Luiska would never have survived the Beast Folk War, let alone grown this strong. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. "Nothing. Just thinking how glad I am to have met you, she smiled. We'd been together 2 years now, and she understood me well. She noticed how my eyes always drifted to her when she was nearby. She never pointed it out, just smiled to herself. She also noticed I'd never touched any other woman. Not Elialu, not Reina, nobody. I apparently had no interest in concubines at all. That made her happy, though she also noticed my training had given me a bit too much energy lately. She didn't exactly mind that part. The mithril she brought went straight to Biglin the dwarf blacksmith. He nearly froze when he saw it. He'd never handled that much mithril in his life. He wanted to forge it into a single legendary weapon, but I ordered him to mix it into insulated steel and refined steel to create elite equipment for my soldiers. He worked overtime and produced 1,000 complete sets: armor, shields, and longswords. The silver-white gear was incredibly tough. His old insulated steel weapons couldn't even scratch the new armor. The mithril also made the swords lighter and easier to wield. Then Biglin surprised me. He'd secretly forged a personal sword for me, 30% mithril, 70% insulated steel. It was beautiful. Snow-white blade, elegant flowing handle, a blue gemstone set in the grip, and a pure white scabbard. It felt cold and perfectly balanced in my hand. With my combat rating at 40, I could use it as naturally as my own arm. Well done, Biglin. The dwarf beamed with relief. He'd been worried I'd be angry about him using precious mithril without permission. I called Elialu to bring him 2 gold coins as a reward. He dropped to his knees. Thank you for your generosity, my lord. Praised the great master. Back at the church, things were getting interesting. Old Archbishop Stjebo, Yeluna's great-uncle who practically raised her, noticed she'd been visiting me again. He'd already seen that her ring had turned blue, meaning she was in love. He felt like someone had stolen his precious cabbage. He'd heard about me, capturing Rima royalty, winning the gladiator tournament. Decent enough, he supposed, though he knew I hadn't fought in the arena myself. He couldn't figure out how his sweet girl even met me. Then he asked the other bishops to fetch some mithril from the vault to make a holy necklace for the king of Rima, who donated 1,000,000 gold coins. The bishops squirmed and stuttered. After Stjebo nearly exploded yelling at them, they finally admitted Yeluna had taken the mithril. To Luiska, the old man's terrifying aura vanished instantly. He stood there stunned, then burst out laughing. That rebellious girl. They were only engaged, and she was already emptying the church's treasury. A piece of mithril worth over 10,000,000 gold coins, just handed over. He barely calmed himself down. Fine. It's for someone she loves. He could accept that. Then he asked about selling a pair of griffins to the Yade King for 100,000 gold. The griffins were sent to Luiska last year. By the Holy Maiden, Stjebo's fist clenched. Meanwhile, I was having a peaceful morning. Yeluna was still sleeping beautifully in bed. I admired her face for a moment, then went out to train. When I came back, the butler rushed to me looking anxious. Church bishops had arrived. I washed up, changed clothes, and walked into the castle. An old man in bishop's robes sat in a chair, flanked by 2 standing bishops. His stats were staggering. Strategy at 367, rated SS, with talents including Holy Light Mastery, Magic Sensitivity, Grand Healing, and Forbidden Magic. Almost as powerful as Baidi. No loyalty or affection scores showed, which I expected. I already knew I'd married into power, but seeing this great uncle's strength in person made me genuinely smile. I greeted them politely. The 2 standing bishops managed awkward nods. The old man sitting down didn't bother hiding his displeasure. I quietly signaled Elialu to go wake Yeluna. Viscount Linwei, Stjebo said coldly. I had no idea what I'd done wrong, but powerful people have tempers. I let it slide. When he looked me over, I could tell he was scanning for magical energy. Finding none, he frowned deeper. No magic meant I couldn't learn spells. And since children inherit from both parents, even with Yeluna's incredible talent, my lack of magic meant our children might not be able to use magic or healing at all. That clearly made him dislike me even more. Stjebo kept glaring at me with growing displeasure. All he could see was a good-looking kid with nothing special about him. A pretty face doesn't put food on the table. What's your father's name? He asked, digging into my background. I mentioned my father, Baron Ryan, then played my stronger card, my grandfather, Baron Edward, who was once one of No-Ran's greatest fighters. Stjebo's expression shifted. He recognized the name immediately. Turns out, he and my grandfather had competed over the same woman years ago. Neither won her in the end, but they'd been friends for a while. When grandfather died from old wounds, Stjebo had felt genuine sadness. He would have helped if grandfather had just asked, but both old men were too proud. Now here was fate tying their families together through Yelena and me. Knowing my connection to Edward only seemed to make him angrier. He looked like a volcano about to erupt. The two bishops behind him backed away. I was calculating my escape route when Yelena's voice rang out from the doorway. "Grandpa Stjebo, what brings you here?" The old man's furious face transformed instantly. I could hardly believe my eyes. "Humph. If I didn't come, you'd have emptied the entire church treasury." Yelena grabbed his arm and put on her most innocent face. "But Grandpa, didn't you say everything in the church belongs to me? Luiska is my home too. I'm just moving things from one home to another." The two bishops behind us turned pale. I froze. That was pouring oil on fire. But somehow Stjebo just sighed. "I've been a bad grandfather. I should have paid more attention to you." Yelena melted him completely. She told him Luiska was prosperous thanks to me and pulled him outside for a tour, throwing me a reassuring wink over her shoulder. This was my first time meeting family in either of my lives. Thank goodness my fiancé handled it, because I definitely couldn't have managed that old grand mage on my own. While I served tea and snacks to the two relieved bishops, Yelena walked Stjebo through the territory. She fed him grilled chicken skewers from the street vendors. Even he had to admit the place was impressive. Lots of small merchants meant a wealthy population, something even most Duke territories lacked. The people here looked healthy and happy, smiling genuinely. That earned me a few points in his book. Then she brought him to the military camp where Ankro was drilling the guards. Stjebo saw thousands of soldiers in gleaming armor, well-equipped and well-trained. He estimated at least 10,000. Being able to support that many elite guards took real ability. He grudgingly admitted I was smarter than my grandfather. At least I wasn't some muscle-brained idiot who'd mistreat Yelena. He decided I barely passed his test. Then Yelena led him up onto the city walls. Even this old man who'd seen everything froze with wide eyes. Beyond the walls stretched an entire second Luiska he hadn't expected to see. Stjebo stood on my city walls and couldn't believe his eyes. Beyond the inner walls, there was an entire second settlement stretching toward the Rima River with its own wider walls. Thousands of wooden houses, all new, bustling with life. He could tell at least 100,000 people lived out there, war refugees I'd taken in. He got suspicious, accepting that many refugees takes enormous resources. He side-eyed Yelena, probably wondering if she'd been secretly funding me. "What does Lin Wei do for money?" he asked her casually. Yelena beamed with pride. "The cream that's been popular across all of Norans? That's his invention. He's exporting it to Yade and Rima now, 100 gold coins per jar." Her eyes sparkled when she talked about me. Stjebo nodded slowly. He'd heard about the cream business, but never knew it was mine. Fair enough. Maybe I was worth the mithril and griffins after all. Lucky for me, he didn't find out Yelena had also been secretly shipping me wheat, or he might have fainted. He visited my estate and saw the griffins were well-fed and healthy. He sighed but accepted it. Then he checked the blacksmith workshop. Viglin and his team were hard at work, rows of finished swords and armor gleaming on the racks. Stjebo stared at the silver shine on those weapons. Something familiar about that color. He looked at Yelena. She immediately glanced away, avoiding his eyes. He let out a heavy sigh. "His mithril. On swords. For my soldiers." He stayed 2 days. Gave me plenty of cold looks the entire time, but I stayed respectful and polite. That seemed to satisfy his need to feel like the stern elder. He could see Yelena was genuinely happy here, and that I truly cared about her. Since her parents died young and she'd carried the holy maiden's burden alone, he'd always worried she'd never find someone. Turns out he worried for nothing. Before leaving, he called me over. "You better treat my Yelena well, or I'll show you what a grand mage's anger looks like." I grinned. "Of course, Grandpa Stjebo. Even if I end up homeless, I'll make sure Yelena eats first." He rolled his eyes. "If you lost everything, she'd just go back to the church. You think she needs to beg with you?" Then he handed me a necklace. Light blue, masculine in design, with a polished dragon bone tooth hanging from the end. It felt warm in my hand. Something powerful was sleeping inside it. "Keep it safe. Maybe one day you'll suddenly be able to use magic." Yelena looked surprised. This necklace was blessed by the light goddess. Someone at the church had worn it and awakened the ability to sense magic energy. Countless people had begged Stjebo for it, and he'd refused them all. He'd told Yelena he was saving it for the person she loved. She carefully placed it around my neck. The old man glanced back at his granddaughter one more time before his carriage pulled away, smiling warmly. He was probably already dreaming about great-grandchildren. After he left, I held Yelena close, resting my chin on her head. Yelena, I'm so lucky to have you. She hugged me back. Linwei, I feel the same way. I'm so lucky to have you. Winter came to Luiska. Children played in the thick snow while Yelena watched them with a warm, motherly gaze. She touched her still flat belly and sighed softly. No little Luiska on the way yet. But she didn't mind too much. More time alone with me wasn't so bad. The griffins had fully matured. Even the smallest was elephant-sized now. Better yet, they'd laid 13 eggs over winter. I moved them all into a heated cabin with a fire to keep the temperature steady. Griffin hatching rates are terrible in the wild. 5 out of 13 would be lucky. And even then, many chicks die young. That's why griffins are so rare despite being incredibly powerful and long-lived. The adult griffins could now wear the armor Yelena had brought, rare metal plating with traces of mithril, tough as my best equipment. They didn't like it at first, but Enkiyuna calmed them down. Once they got used to the weight, it would dramatically improve their survival in battle. I had to admit, armored griffins looked far more impressive. Even during winter, I was already planning the spring offensive against the lizard folk. They'd raided my new territory again and again. I'd been more than patient waiting until spring to strike back. As far as anyone was concerned, I was the innocent pioneer defending himself. I equipped Ankro's elite 1,000-man squad with the mithril gear Biglin had forged. Every one of them had a combat rating of at least 50. They carried towering shields, mithril steel longswords, and gleaming silver armor. These were all skilled horsemen too. Mount them on northern warhorses, and they'd become the deadliest heavy cavalry imaginable. Compared to when I first built my forces, the gap was enormous. If I faced that same beastfolk army again, I'd crush them with minimal losses. I still remembered that dogman's axe throw. Next time, I'd kill him personally. When spring melted the snow, my expedition force-marched out. 15,000 elite guards headed straight into lizard folk territory. I left 5,000 behind to protect the settlement and kept the lizard folk prisoners locked in underwater cells. Our target was the 3 largest lizard folk tribes, each with over 50,000 members. We were outnumbered, but our fighting power wasn't even comparable. The Mithril Vanguard led the charge. We hit them fast. Many lizard folk were still enjoying the spring thaw when my soldiers cut them down. Ankro charged at the front. Lizard folk swung curved swords and thrust spears at him. The weapons bounced off his mithril shield without leaving a scratch. His mithril sword sliced through leather armor and flesh like a hot knife through butter. Lizard folk were cut in half before they understood what was happening. A lizard folk mage blasted Ankro with a mid-level spell. Nothing, not even a mark on his armor. The mage fired spell after spell in disbelief. Ankro calmly pulled an arrow from his quiver and put it through the mage's chest. The fighting lasted all day. My guards lost about 100 men and killed nearly 10,000 lizard folk. Over 30,000 were captured, including females and young ones. A tribe of 50,000, completely destroyed in less than a day. My mithril elite squad suffered 0 casualties. The jungle reeked of blood. Birds scattered into the sky as if telling the world what had just happened. I locked up the 30,000 captured lizard folk and armed my civilians with old equipment to help guard them. Each patrol squad had 2 guards paired with 3 civilians, enough to handle unarmed prisoners. My guards didn't rest. Before dawn, they marched on the second lizard folk tribe, just one small mountain range away. The first attack had been so sudden, and the 2 tribes didn't get along, so neither warned the other. We crushed the second tribe just as easily, another 20,000 prisoners, and only about a dozen guards lost. This continent had over 300,000 lizard folk spread across more than 100 tribes. I'd wiped out the 2 biggest, around 70 to 80,000 total. But plenty escaped and spread the word. Nearby tribes fled before my soldiers could reach them. After 2 days of hard fighting in mountain terrain, my men were exhausted. Lizard folk moved through these mountains far better than my armored soldiers, and horses were useless in this landscape. Ankro brought everyone back to base. I now had more lizard folk prisoners than my own people. That was a headache. I shipped over the lizard folk slaves I'd bought originally and brought Shalise to translate. The prisoners filled every cage and open space we had. Young and strong lizard folk were tied with rope. The elderly and children were left unbound and grouped separately. All of them watched me with terrified, hostile eyes. I didn't have enough slave collars for 50,000 prisoners, so I prioritized. I ordered Ankro to collar only the young, strong ones, then release their bindings. While the collars were being fitted, the lizard folk screamed insults nonstop. Shali's face scrunched up. Apparently, they were saying awful things. I didn't care. Friends, I began through Shali's. I mean you no harm. They erupted in furious shouting. I smiled and nodded at Ankro. He walked into the crowd and beheaded the loudest ones. Blood sprayed. The shouting died instantly. Those friends didn't appreciate my friendship, I said calmly, so I sent them to meet the great light goddess. She's more forgiving than I am. You have two choices. Submit or die. You're welcome to pretend to submit and wait for a chance to rebel. I actually recommend that approach. Because if you disobey openly, you won't see tomorrow's sunrise. After Shali's translated, the lizard folk went quiet. The guards' swords were still dripping. Once the young males had their collars on, I ordered their ropes cut. Immediately, dozens lunged for the guards' weapons. Their collars exploded. Necks burst open. Bodies dropped. After that, nobody else tried anything. When the surviving warriors stood in formation, I nodded with satisfaction. Good. I'm not an unreasonable lord. Serve me loyally, and your lives won't change. You can keep living on this land and raising your families. All I ask is your oath of loyalty. An old lizard folk stepped forward. My guards surrounded him, but I waved them off. He was ancient, dull gray scales, cloudy eyes, but the others clearly respected him. He spoke slowly, and Shali's translated. He says, Great human lord, as long as you promise not to slaughter lizard folk freely, the Misha tribe pledges its loyalty to you. I smiled. Of course, I'm a pioneer, not a butcher. Serve me well, and I won't trouble you. When I got back, I'd need to buy a lot more slave collars. Until their loyalty was high enough, those collars would be the foundation of our beautiful friendship. While my army rested after crushing those two tribes, the surviving lizard folk did something I hadn't expected. They sent a messenger to the Vastaya. Chief Tiwa of the Thorn tribe received the lizard folk envoy with surprise. The two races had always clashed, and the only time they'd ever cooperated was when goblins invaded from underground. Tiwa's first thought was exactly that, another goblin attack. But the messenger told him the truth. A force of heavily armed humans had appeared and destroyed the two largest lizard folk tribes almost overnight. 70 to 80,000 lizard folk, tens of thousands killed, the rest vanished. The messenger hadn't even found human bodies on the battlefield. He begged for Vastaya help, warning that if they didn't unite, extinction was next. After sending the envoy away, Tiwa turned to Timmy for her thoughts. She'd matured since returning home, and he was grooming her for leadership. Timmy played her role perfectly. She suggested scouting the humans first rather than blindly trusting the lizard folk. Maybe the lizard folk were lying. Maybe this was a trap to lure the Vastaya into a war. The rivalry between the two races had been getting worse, after all. She analyzed every angle calmly. Tiwa was impressed. His daughter had grown up. Then he posed the harder question. What if these human warriors truly are unbeatable? Timmy put on a fierce expression. We fight to the death. We can never abandon Vastaya honor. But Tiwa shook his head gently. He reminded her that their ancestors once lived beyond the mountains and the great river. They'd been pushed here because they lost to humans and beast folk. Survival mattered more than pride. If it came to it, he said, he would bear the shame of defeat himself. Timmy could become the new chief and submit to the humans. At least submission meant survival. Living, he told her, is the only way to someday break free. Timmy pretended to be outraged. She insisted she would never surrender Vastaya honor. Inside, of course, she was already on my side. Her performance was so convincing that if I'd been watching, I would have given her an Oscar. She volunteered to scout the human forces personally. Tiwa agreed. My chess piece was moving exactly as planned. Timmy went out to scout with a few Vastaya warriors, playing her role perfectly. She acted cautious, told them to keep their distance from the lizard folk camps. They found the truth easily enough. The two biggest lizard folk tribes were indeed destroyed. Rotting corpses littered the ground, the stench overwhelming. The warriors' faces went pale. This was no trick. Goblins couldn't have done this so quickly. Timmy sent one warrior back to report to her father, then led the other two toward my new territory. They saw everything I wanted them to see. My guards in full armor, gleaming in the sunlight. Thousands of captured lizard folk pinned in open areas. Watchtowers manned by alert soldiers. And then, the thing that really shook them, 8 fully armored adult griffins. The Vastaya warriors couldn't believe it. Iron was a luxury they could barely get their hands on, and here was an entire army wrapped in it. The armored griffins were beyond anything they'd imagined. My sentries spotted them in the sky. I had my men shoot, but miss on purpose. The arrows whistled past the Vastaya, close enough to terrify them. They fled immediately, thinking they'd barely escaped. The truth was, my best marksmen manned those towers. Targets that big, they could hit them in their sleep. I watched from the shadows and confirmed Timmy was among them. I smiled. She was my most important piece on this board. I'd never let her get hurt. This whole display was calculated. Crushing the lizard folk wasn't just about territory, it was a warning for the Vastaya. I needed them to understand that resistance was hopeless. But since they could fly, they'd be incredibly annoying to fight. I couldn't just rely on brute force. I needed their surrender. Back at the Thorn tribe, Timmy collapsed into her father's arms, crying, "Father, we can't win." The warriors confirmed everything. Fully armored soldiers, thousands of them. Bows everywhere. Armored griffins. The humans had clearly used griffins to cross the mountain, which meant they probably had far more than the 8 that were visible. Tiwa's heart sank. He understood immediately. If these humans could transport that many elite soldiers across the mountains, a handful of griffins wasn't all they had. But he couldn't show fear. His daughter and warriors were already panicking. If the chief broke too, the entire tribe would fall apart. Timmy's performance was flawless. She'd shown her father exactly what I wanted him to see, nudged him toward the conclusion I needed, and he had no idea she was working for me. After calming Timmy down, Chief Tiwa sat alone for a long time. Then he made his decision. He'd go meet the human leader himself. At minimum, he needed to guarantee his people's safety. Losing freedom was better than losing lives. He'd bear the blame alone. He didn't bother trying to unite the other Vastaya tribes. Even during the Goblin Wars, they'd been too selfish to cooperate. Against humans, some would probably rush to betray their own kind for a better deal. His young son Tyr stopped him at the door. The boy couldn't know the details, but he sensed something serious. "Father, I'll take care of my sisters," he said quietly. Tiwa laughed, ruffled his hair, and flew off into the sky. I'd been waiting at the new territory for days, expecting exactly this. Timmy had told me her father was the type to sacrifice himself for his tribe. He'd come personally. I wore my mithril armor and sword, watching from the watchtower as the sun began to set. Just when I thought nobody was coming, a sentry with the eagle-eye talent spotted a dot in the sky. "My lord, a bird person approaching." "Good. Nobody fires. Let him come close." I waved at him from the tower. Tiwa was cautious, keeping his distance, watching for an ambush. But when he saw my soldiers lower their bows, he slowly came closer. He took in everything. Tens of thousands of armored guards, captured lizard folk working the land with slave collars, armored griffins. Now he understood why his daughter and warriors had come back terrified. He landed without resistance. Ankro escorted him to me. Reyna stood beside me in her maid outfit, and little Shalise held my hand, ready to translate. "Hello, respected Vastaya sir," I said with a smile. "How should I address you?" Tiwa had been frowning, only just realizing we spoke different languages. Then Shalise translated perfectly into Vastan. He was stunned. We'd even brought someone who spoke his language. "I am Tiwa, chief of the Thorn tribe, just as I expected." "Welcome, chief. What brings you here?" He noticed Reyna, probably confused by a dragon-blooded girl in a maid uniform. Then he delivered his pitch. "I've come with goodwill from the Thorn tribe. I hope we can build an equal friendship between our peoples." Equal friendship. He was trying to negotiate the best deal he could. I smiled warmly. "Of course. Luiska will always be your friend." My instant agreement clearly confused him. He'd expected resistance, conditions, demands. Instead, I just agreed. He was already second-guessing everything. Was I genuinely peaceful? Or was I just keeping the Vastaya quiet while I finished off the lizard folk first? I enjoyed this feeling, having every piece exactly where I wanted it. Tiwa had come to me, which meant he was desperate. I didn't need to demand submission openly. He came offering friendship, and I accepted graciously. That was far more powerful than making demands. Him approaching me and me approaching him were two completely different things. The awkward silence lasted 2 seconds. I'd arranged for Narancel and his mages to practice combat spells nearby, loud, flashy, impossible to miss. Tiwa watched over 100 mages blasting the landscape and swallowed hard. The lizard folk's biggest tribe had maybe 10 low-level mages. I had over 100, led by a high-level mage whose spells dwarfed anything these natives had ever seen. The Vastaya feared magic more than anything. It was written deep in their bones from years of fighting lizard folk mages. Now Tiwa was seeing bows, griffins, elite soldiers, and a mage army all in one place. He gave in. "Respected human lord, if I offer the Thorn tribe submission, can you guarantee our people's safety?" This was exactly what I'd been waiting for. His submission wasn't truly reliable yet, but that's what slave collars were for. "Of course," I said warmly. "I'm no demon. Join Luiska, and all Vastaya will have the same rights as my other people. I'm a pioneer, not an executioner." Tiwa had one condition. "If you swear before the Light Goddess, the entire Thorn tribe will serve you." He'd read that the Light Goddess watches over oaths. A divine vow couldn't be broken lightly. If Yelena had been here, she probably would have stopped me. But she wasn't. "I swear before the Great Light Goddess. All Thorn tribe members will receive the same rights as Luiska citizens, so long as they don't betray me." Something briefly watched me as I spoke. A presence, there and gone in an instant. Tiwa smiled and bowed. "It is our pleasure to serve you, my lord." After he left, I felt satisfied. The Vastaya were the real prize here, a rare flying race. The lizard folk were just a matter of time and numbers. I told Tiwa to stay where they were and spread my friendly attitude to other Vastaya tribes. I even armed some collared lizard folk to help my guards with the ongoing expansion. Conquering this entire continent would take another year or two, but I was in no rush. I returned to Luiska because Wolfuri was back from his trade expedition. He'd sold all the cream, bought alchemy materials, rare minerals, and 2,000 warhorses. After expenses, he'd earned 500,000 gold coins. Combined with the previous 3,000, I now had over 5,000 horses. I rewarded him with gold and told him his wife was about to give birth. The former refugee turned merchant captain was going to be a father. He left in a hurry, beaming. Then Yeluna's slightly jealous voice drifted into my ear. "How nice. He's becoming a father. When are you becoming one?" I tapped her forehead gently. "No rush. After we're married." Then I asked her something that had been bothering me. "If someone swears an oath to the Light Goddess, does the goddess actually watch? Can the oath be broken?" Yeluna's eyes went wide with alarm. "Linwei, did you swear an oath to the Light Goddess?" "What did you say?" Her face turned anxious. Apparently, this wasn't something to take lightly. I told Yeluna about my oath. She frowned seriously and warned me that divine oaths are real. The gods watch, and anyone who breaks their vow gets punished. She told me never to swear carelessly before the gods again. But she relaxed a little when she heard what I'd actually promised. Equal rights for the Thorn tribe wasn't hard to deliver. Seeing how worried she was, I squeezed her hand and said, "I need to make one more oath." Before she could get angry, I continued, "I swear before the Light Goddess that I will always love Yeluna. No divine presence this time." She pouted. "You just like making me happy." Then she said, "I swear before the Light Goddess that I will only ever love Linwei." That actually made me feel a pang of guilt. We'd both said we loved each other, but there was a difference between always love and only ever love. A strange weight pressed on my chest. I shook it off. That night, I couldn't sleep. The necklace Jebo gave me was burning hot. Even after I put it in a drawer, I could feel the heat like it was against my skin. It had started warming up right after I made that oath to the Light Goddess. The moonlight poured through the window. Yeluna slept peacefully beside me. I took the necklace out and studied it. The polished dragon bone tooth, smooth and round, radiating heat that grew stronger at my touch. Then it hit me. A thunderclap inside my skull. A tingling wave rushed through my entire body. Strange memories flooded my mind. An unknown power surged from my heart outward, spreading through every limb. It felt similar to magic, but completely different. I couldn't channel it through a staff or cast spells, but I could pour it into my body or anything I was touching. A shield, a sword. Battle aura. The power that vanished 1,000 years ago. The one that disappeared when the god of battle aura and the god of the undead destroyed each other. Everyone had forgotten it even existed. The necklace was supposed to awaken magical sensitivity. Instead, I'd awakened something that shouldn't exist anymore. I checked my stats. My combat rating barely changed, 42. But a new talent had appeared, beginner battle aura warrior. I crept out of bed without waking Yeluna and headed to the training grounds. A few patrolling guards saluted me, surprised to see me up so late. I grabbed a sword from the weapons shed and stood before a thick wooden training post wrapped in iron sheeting, the kind soldiers practiced on daily. I took a deep breath, focused that unfamiliar energy into the blade. Swung. The sword cut through the iron-wrapped post like a knife through butter. The entire thing split clean in half. The guards watching nearby were stunned. Even Ankro couldn't cut one of these in a single strike. Looking at my arms, there was no way someone my size should produce that kind of force. I was too excited to notice their stares. I could feel the aura inside me had dropped significantly. One more strike, and it would be empty. But as I closed my eyes, the power was already slowly recovering, and the capacity seemed slightly larger than before. Use it more, grow stronger. I could become a mid-level aura warrior before long. I'd always told myself it was fine that I couldn't learn magic. But honestly, as someone from another world, how could I not crave supernatural power? I remembered that battle on the walls, the dogman's axe knocking me off. If I'd had this power back then, that never would have happened. Without Baidi's pendant saving my life, I'd be long dead with grass growing over my grave. Yelena found me at the training grounds the next morning, relieved but annoyed. She'd woken up to a cold bed and nobody knew where I'd gone. I felt guilty but couldn't contain my excitement. Yelena, do you know what battle aura is? Her eyes widened. I showed her, channeling the energy into my arm, a faint yellow glow spreading from my bicep to my fist. She grabbed my arm and studied it closely, comparing it to ancient texts she'd read. It was real, a power lost for 1,000 years, and I'd somehow awakened it. I briefly wondered what would happen if I applied battle aura in certain creative situations with Yelena. I shook that ridiculous thought away immediately. After the Thorn Tribe submission, I bought massive quantities of slave collars. My oath protected the Vastaya, but I had no such agreement with the lizard folk. I planted my original 200 lizard folk slaves among the prisoners as agents, slowly changing hearts and minds from the inside. The war against the lizard folk tribes lasted through spring. By midsummer, every tribe, large and small, had been conquered. The Vastaya went even smoother. Following the Thorn Tribe's lead, almost all Vastaya tribes agreed to become my subjects. The few who refused were actually captured by the Thorn Tribe loyalists and delivered to me. I just slapped collars on them and sent them home. Much less trouble than the lizard folk. After unifying the continent above ground, I learned about the goblins and gnomes below. They had an enormous underground kingdom and regularly raided the surface. That was a headache for later. My soldiers needed rest first. My territory had expanded to 5 times the size of New Luiska, though most of it was undeveloped forest and mountains. I now had over 100,000 lizard folk living under my rule. The young and strong wore slave collars and helped clear land. The elderly and weak were given freedom, limited freedom, but freedom. They built houses on designated land and couldn't wander too far. Friction between humans and lizard folk was inevitable, but my authority kept things under control. My human settlers were mostly refugees grateful just to be alive, so they didn't complain much. The lizard folk expected slavery, endless labor, and beatings. Instead, they found something different. Guards patrolled nearby, but more like protectors than oppressors, fending off wild beasts and goblin raiders. Food was decent. Work hours were sunrise to sunset, nothing extreme. My original lizard folk agents kept quietly shifting attitudes from within. Most lizard folk stopped thinking about escape. Being governed by humans, they were starting to realize, wasn't so bad after all. Today was a big day. After years of work and nearly 1,000 people helping, Jowan and Galen finally launched our first ship. The Rima River is so wild that the vessel needed serious weight to stay stable. The hull stretched over 200 meters, built from redwood and wrapped in iron plating. 3 massive triangular sails carried my family crest, the bluebird, soaring in the wind as if alive. Thousands of guards pulled together to drag the ship into the river. A tremendous splash, and my heart pounded watching the rapids hit the hull. But the ship sat perfectly steady. Once the anchor dropped, it didn't budge an inch. The brothers hugged each other, overjoyed. I'd poured almost everything Wolfuri earned from trade into this shipyard and ship. Between soldier pay, equipment, and construction, my treasury was nearly empty. But with this ship, trade runs that used to take a full year could be done in a fraction of the time. River travel was so much faster than overland caravans. "My lord, please name her," the brothers asked eagerly. I thought for a moment. "The Pioneer, my first ship." The name felt right. I now commanded 40,000 fully equipped guards, 1,000 elite soldiers in mithril gear with combat ratings above 50, 5,000 trained cavalry, though their horse armor was still being forged. No wars on the horizon, so things felt peaceful for once. The church's reputation kept me safe. Soft rice was delicious indeed. But a thought kept nagging me. My original barony was separated from Luiska by Lancer Fortress and a large forest, both occupied by beast folk. If I could take that territory, my lands would connect into one piece. I'd need a legitimate reason to attack, though. Then it hit me. Once the Vastaya were fully unified, I could use them as a proxy. If the Vastaya attacked the Otto tribe, nobody would connect it to me. That plan would wait until my new territory stabilized. Yelena had to leave for church duties again. Before going, she straightened my clothes gently and told me to take care of myself. Then she whispered seriously, "Keep the battle or a secret. Don't let anyone find out." I nodded. I understood the consequences better than anyone. Then she glanced at Elyulu and asked casually, "Lin Wei, when do you plan to take a concubine?" Elyulu's ears perked up instantly. I completely misread the situation. I thought Yelena was warning me to behave. "No plans for that," I said, too busy with territory management. Yelena realized I'd misunderstood, but let it go. She wanted to make sure her child came first. The firstborn son would have inheritance rights, and being the mother of the heir meant everything for her position. After her carriage disappeared, I turned to Elyulu. "Do I really seem like that kind of person?" She shook her head. "You're the most disciplined noble I've ever seen." I agreed wholeheartedly. "See? Nothing to worry about. At least for now, I had no such plans. As for the future, well, who can say what the future holds?" While I was busy with ships and territory, things were happening at the Magic Academy that I'd only learn about later. Princess Ainwire had hit a wall. Despite Zaluka teaching her everything she asked, her magic barely improved. She finally understood what Grand Major Ria had told her on day one. To master magic, you need focus. Ainwire was splitting her time between alchemy experiments for her succubus teacher, swordsmanship training, and magic study. There simply weren't enough hours. Her magic energy accumulated too slowly for real progress. She also worried about the bigger picture. Noran's military was crumbling, and the uneasy peace between Rima and Yade depended on Noran's being strong enough to keep both sides in check. Once Noran's collapsed completely, war could easily spill into Rima. She needed to be strong enough to protect her kingdom, or she'd end up as nothing more than a political bargaining chip for her father, King Charlie. She had no illusions about that. Charlie had traded territory for her release easily enough, but his generosity had limits. If her value dropped below what he needed, she'd be sacrificed without hesitation. She even suspected her earlier kidnapping with her brother might have been orchestrated. After all, Count Wayne was executed right after. Before leaving, she made one last play. She offered Zaluka an incredible deal: come to Rima after becoming a Grand Mage. She'd be appointed head of the Magic Academy and given an honorary duke title with the same status as Iria. Zaluka shook her head. "I can't. My teacher is in Noran's, so I'll stay in Noran's." She was really thinking of me, of course, but using Iria as her excuse was perfectly reasonable. Ainwire couldn't hide a flash of disappointment. Bringing Zaluka home would have changed everything. Her father might even consider making her queen. But without Zaluka, it was just a fantasy. Still, she consoled herself. Being Zaluka's second closest friend was valuable enough. When the day came that Ainwire stood against me and the church, surely Zaluka wouldn't just stand by and watch her best friend get crushed. The two girls said their goodbyes. Zaluka felt a little sad watching her friend leave, but honestly, Ainwire's constant questions had been slowing down her training. All Zaluka wanted now was to become a Grand Mage as fast as possible and return to my side. Things had gotten quiet lately. Almost boring. The lizard folk had stopped trying to escape. Honestly, their lives were better now than before. Back in their tribes, meals depended on luck and hunting skill. Now they just had to work and food appeared. They didn't even know yet that my original citizens got paid silver coins on top of meals. The Thorn tribe moved right next to my settlement under Tiwa's leadership, which encouraged other Vastaya tribes to follow. 3 different races living together in surprising peace. Nobody loved it, but under my authority, they accepted it. The pioneer was hauling supplies and people to the new territory, speeding up development massively. Jowen and Galen were already building a second ship. Ankro kept patrols running day and night in case goblins attacked. Wolfuri was preparing to sail the Pioneer to Rima for trade. What used to take months by horse carriage would now take just 2 weeks by river. Before departure, I picked up a custom helmet from Biglin, silver with clean lines and a small blue bird engraved on the front. A movable face guard gave full protection without blocking my vision. I put on mithril armor, grabbed my mithril sword, and looked in the mirror. I finally looked like a real knight, not the weak noble I used to be. My combat rating had reached 45. With battle aura, I could hit harder than even Ankro. Still nowhere near Reyna, but I was genuinely strong now. What I lacked was real combat experience and technique. So I made a bold decision. I was going with the trade ship to Rima. I registered as an adventurer at the Luisco Adventurers Guild. Rima had more ruins, bandits, wild beasts, and magical creatures. Perfect training grounds. The whole reason I was sneaking away was Reyna. If I trained at home, she'd shadow me constantly, and I'd never face real danger. I needed to struggle against tough opponents myself. I left a letter in my study for Elialu explaining I'd joined the merchant fleet and would return by late autumn. Shalise had full authority over territory affairs. If Yelena came back, she'd take over. Standing on the bow of the Pioneer, I drank some of Wolfuri's fruit wine, tossed the flask dramatically on the deck, and spread my arms into the rushing river wind. Wolfuri quietly picked up his flask. "My lord, your drinking posture is truly heroic," he said, clearly not meaning it. Back home, Elialu found my empty study with the window wide open and the letter on the desk. She felt hurt. I'd never left without saying goodbye before. She understood I was avoiding Reyna's protection, but still, a lord shouldn't just vanish. She sighed and hoped I'd come home safe by autumn's end. The Pioneer sailed smoother than I expected. 2 weeks on the Rima River, and I felt fine the whole time, while Wolfuri and his crew were throwing up nonstop. Maybe my constitution from my previous world helped. When we docked at Rima's port, our ship caused a stir. Rima's biggest vessels were barely 100 meters. Ours was over 200. Soldiers scrambled into defensive positions until Wolfuri showed them the church insignia. Everyone assumed only the church could build something this massive. I put on my armor and headed to the Adventurers Guild. My silver gear drew plenty of attention. Pretty girls tried chatting me up and teams tried recruiting me. I looked like a serious knight, not an ordinary adventurer. I registered under the name, Wei Lin, just my real name flipped around, a spur-of-the-moment idea. My rank was E, the lowest, since I had 0 completed missions. When people heard that, most teams walked away, assuming I was some sheltered noble playing soldier. I told the guild receptionist I wanted a C-rank mission, 2 levels above mine, the maximum allowed. I picked a bounty on a bandit called Fong, a former royal knight turned murderer who'd already killed several C-rank adventurers. The receptionist tried to talk me out of it. I tapped my armor. "I may be your rank, but I'm no rookie." Before she could process the request, a cold voice cut in. "I'm taking the Fong mission." I turned around, ready to argue, and froze. Ainwire. Small world. She didn't recognize me behind the helmet. Her swordmaster had sent her to kill this bandit as training, and she wasn't giving the mission up for anything. She offered me compensation, any amount of gold. I shrugged and tapped my gleaming armor. "As you can see, Your Highness, I don't need money. I'm a knight who lives for strength and freedom. Dirty work like hunting bandits is exactly what knights are for. A kind and beautiful lady like yourself shouldn't bother with such things." Something about me clearly irritated her. She couldn't put her finger on it, but my presence made her uncomfortable. If I hadn't looked so different from the weak Lin way, she remembered, she might have figured it out. "What's your name?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "Wei Lin," I said without flinching. Thank goodness I changed it. The tension between us was awkward. The receptionist jumped in with a suggestion. "Why don't you two team up? You could watch each other's backs." "I agree," she said. "I refuse," I said at the same time. I didn't want to team up with Ainwire. If she figured out who I was, things would get ugly fast. And sleeping near a woman who might hate me? I'd worry about waking up with a blade at my throat. But the receptionist told me there were no other C-rank combat missions available. Some B-rank teams had just cleared out all the gathering quests. Since I came here specifically to fight and grow stronger, Fong was my only option. "Fine, we'll team up." Ainwire wasn't thrilled either, but she just wanted to finish the job quickly and move on. We agreed to meet at the city gate at sunset, since Fong only operated at night. Before leaving, she surprised me with a warning. You're wearing expensive gear, but carrying an E-rank card. People will notice. The capital has dark corners even the guards can't reach. Then she walked away without waiting for a reply. That was unexpectedly kind of her. But I'd already noticed the tails following me. They'd been on me since I first walked through the streets in my shiny armor. I spent the afternoon exploring the Rima capital. It was completely different from Noran's. People wore colorful headscarves. The color told you their status and whether they were married. Light-colored scarves meant an unmarried girl. Noble crests on the fabric meant nobility. Not everyone followed this tradition, though. Ainwire clearly belonged to the progressive camp. I'd never seen her wear one. After eating at a tavern, I deliberately turned into a dark alley. Dead end. Time to deal with my followers. About a dozen robbers, mostly with combat ratings under 30. Their leader, a one-eyed man with a curved sword, was barely above 40. No special talents among them. I didn't even need battle aura for this. Well, what knight got himself lost? The one-eyed leader sneered, his gang blocking the alley entrance. They figured I wasn't local nobility. They knew every Rima noble by sight. Probably a rich merchant's son or some foreign aristocrat. Fair game. I drew my mithril sword. Its silver gleam made the leader drool. They charged. Their cheap iron blades shattered against my sword on first contact. I cut through weapons and bodies alike. 4 or 5 dropped before they understood what was happening. My heart raced. This was my first time killing anyone personally. But strangely, I felt no discomfort. I'd lived in this violent world too long for that. The one-eyed leader rushed me screaming. He died just as easily. The remaining robbers scattered silently. Calling for guards would only get themselves arrested. I sheathed my sword. Bigland's craftsmanship was remarkable. Blood didn't even stick to the blade. Outside the alley, civilians who'd watched me get cornered stared in shock. They'd expected me to die. Instead, I'd taken on 10 men and won. I walked to an inn, paid a month's rent up front, 2 copper coins per night, and the landlady couldn't stop flirting with me. I took a short nap, then suited up again. This adventurer's life actually felt pretty good. My days back home were comfortable, but too quiet. This was exactly the kind of excitement I'd been missing. When I arrived at the gate, Ainwire was already waiting. I checked her stats and was genuinely surprised. Her combat had jumped from 40 to 90 since we last met. Her strategy was 140. She'd mastered single-handed sword, alchemy, and high-level magic. Rated S-. Whatever drove her to train this hard, she'd become seriously dangerous. "Let's go," she said coldly. No guards, no companions. She was used to being alone. She told me she'd handle Fong while I dealt with his bandits. We walked in silence toward a sprawling ruin outside the city. The remains of Eternalon, supposedly the greatest human empire ever built, destroyed thousands of years ago in that catastrophic war between gods. The crumbling structures were massive, hinting at something truly powerful once standing here. We spotted Fong's camp, a few shabby tents among the rubble. I checked his stats. Combat rating 89. A special talent called Sword Excellence, a tier above Mastery. Nearly equal to Ainwire in pure swordplay. Something felt wrong. A fighter this strong should be rated way above C rank. There had to be a trap. Before I could think it through, Ainwire drew her sword and marched straight toward them. Openly. No stealth, no plan. I stared. Her strategy rating was 140. Walking into a group of armed bandits without any tactical approach. Was she insanely overconfident? I held back, waiting for the right moment. Fong spotted her and smiled strangely. Turns out, some Yade nobleman had put a bounty on Ainwire. 50,000 gold coins, dead or alive. Fong's information said the Sword Saint's student always trained alone. He figured she couldn't have learned much yet. Their blades clashed. Sparks flew. After just one exchange, Ainwire was on the back foot. Fong's swordsmanship was genuinely impressive. Not as good as a Sword Saint, but close enough to pressure her badly. She realized I hadn't shown up yet, and started worrying about getting flanked. Just as the other bandits moved to surround her, I struck. 2 bandits died before they could react, their cheap curved swords shattering against my mithril blade. Within minutes, all 5 or 6 were dead. No battle aura needed, just superior weapons and decent technique. Fong hadn't expected me. His intelligence said the princess trained solo. A fully armored knight showing up ruined everything. He pushed Ainwire back with a powerful strike and fled deeper into the ruins. Ainwire stood panting, sword planted in the ground. She glanced at the dead bandits, then at me. She thought I'd run. Instead, I'd cleaned up the whole group in minutes. She grudgingly acknowledged my skill. But the mission wasn't done. Fong had escaped into the deeper ruins, where dangerous beasts and magical creatures lurked. Waylon, she said seriously, this Fong is extremely strong. The deeper ruins are far more dangerous than a C-rank mission. If you're scared, go back. I'll tell the guild you participated. She planned to chase Fong alone. I shrugged. This is my mission too. I don't give up that easily. The deeper we went into the ruins, the worse my feeling got. The air felt wrong, like something was hiding in the darkness. Ainwire looked calm, but I could see goosebumps on her exposed arms. She had a way of tracking Fong, and he seemed to be leaving trails on purpose. That should have been my first warning. We found him sitting casually ahead, smiling at us like we were entertainment. Before I could step back, a massive stone crashed down behind us, sealing the exit. Welcome to my arena, little kittens, Fong laughed. Over a dozen giant goblins emerged from the shadows. 3 meters tall, carrying enormous spiked clubs. These weren't ordinary goblins. They were stronger and smarter. And Fong stood among them untouched, meaning he'd raised them since birth. It was a trap. I'd been watching for signs the entire way and found nothing. I'd been too confident in my judgment. Staying safe inside my territory for so long had left me short on real experience. A hard lesson. Ainwire reacted first. She pulled out a small wand she kept hidden and blasted several goblins with fire magic. The explosion shook the entire ruin. Dust fell from above. Cracks spread across the ceiling. Stop. The ruins can't take it. One more spell, and we'll be buried alive. She stopped. Her magic had killed several goblins, but Fong had ducked behind cover immediately. Besides, her teacher wanted her to beat him with sword work, not magic. Handle the goblins, she told me. Fong is mine. Then she charged straight at him. The goblins surrounded me. One swung its massive club. The wind alone told me how much power was behind it. I couldn't block that directly. These creatures were far stronger than me physically, and since they weren't classified as demi-humans, I couldn't read their stats. I dodged and slashed at its waist with my mithril sword. Even with that incredible blade, cutting through the thick goblin hide took real effort. My combat rating was still too low for clean kills, but I twisted the blade inside the wound. A killing technique Reyna taught me, and the creature collapsed. More rushed in without giving me a breath. No choice. I channeled battle aura into my sword. Yellow light flowed along the blade. I swung at an incoming spiked club and cut clean through it. With aura boosting my strikes, cutting through goblin flesh became effortless, like a hot knife through butter. 6 goblins fell in quick succession. Combined with Ainwire's earlier kills, the rest lay on the ground whimpering. The threat was neutralized, but when I looked toward Ainwire, she was losing badly. Fong's weapon was magical, something she hadn't expected. With one powerful strike, he shattered her ordinary sword completely. She'd deliberately chosen a non-magical weapon for training purposes. Now she was disarmed against a vicious killer with a magic blade. He grinned cruelly and raised his sword for another strike. Then the ceiling above them cracked, and a massive stone block broke loose. A massive stone crushed Fong into paste. The ruins finally gave way from the earlier explosion and started collapsing around us. I reacted first, diving into a corner where the structure was strongest. Ainwire squeezed into a gap between debris. The rumbling lasted a while, but when the dust settled, I was untouched. Being an adventurer was terrifyingly exciting. Ainwire crawled out looking much worse. Cuts everywhere and a nasty gash on her arm. She pulled out an alchemy potion and poured it on the wound. From her twisted expression, the stuff burned like hell, but it healed the bleeding almost instantly. Her succubus teacher's handiwork. She walked over and checked that I was fine. I could tell she'd reevaluated me. I'd killed 7 or 8 giant goblins solo. Creatures that even her sword saint teacher admitted were physically stronger than any human. She now believed I could match her in a straight fight, and that meant she wanted to recruit me. Mr. Waylon, shall we head back to the guild together to report the mission? Her cold attitude had melted into a natural smile. On the way back, she started probing. Are you a No-Rand's noble? I lied without blinking. My father's a minor baron with no land. I can't inherit anything, and No-Rand's is falling apart. So, I trailed off, painting the picture of a talented but unfortunate knight forced to make his own way. She bought it completely. Her eyes lit up. A landless baron's son would be easy to recruit. Have you considered serving Rima? With your combat skills, King Charlie would welcome you. I can recommend you personally. Earn some merit and you'd get your own territory. I almost laughed out loud. She was drawing me a pie in the sky, the exact same thing I do to people. The nerve. I put on a regretful tone. That's tempting, but my wife is waiting in Norans. She'd worry if I didn't come back with the trade fleet. Married already? Ainwire looked disappointed. She tried again. I could bring my wife to Rima where it was safer. I deflected, saying I needed to earn more silver coins to survive the winter. She pulled out a heavy pouch, over 100 gold coins, and handed it to me as a gift. Consider it thanks for saving my life today. And if you ever change your mind, come find me. She gave me a silver token with her royal insignia. Show this to any guard at the capital, and they'll bring you to me. I pocketed the token quietly. A pass into the royal capital. Just hand it to me. How generous. Thank you so much, Your Highness. Waylin will never forget your kindness. We parted at the guild entrance. She didn't ask me to remove my helmet. Not because she wasn't curious, but because she was confident I'd come back for more. As for the 100 gold coins, that was pocket change to a princess. With time still on my hands before the trade fleet departed, I planned to take on more missions. Fighting those giant goblins had given me a rush that training under Reyna never could. Swinging a real weapon against real monsters and real bandits. I used to only dream about this. Now I was living it. Waylin, thanks to you, we finally made it to B rank. The big guy Nessalon threw his arm around my shoulders, grinning wide. We were celebrating at a tavern. Our little adventurer team had just been promoted. After reaching C rank on my own, I'd spent this past month teaming up with 3 people to keep training. Nessalon was a burly shield and sword fighter with a combat rating of 76. I was a cute priestess with healing abilities. And Califu was a sharp-eyed archer with mixed No-Ran's Rama blood, a striking older sister type. My own stats had grown a lot. Combat had jumped to 60, strategy to 87, and my battle aura had reached mid-level. I used to run dry after 5 aura strikes. Now I could use it over a dozen times before feeling exhausted. A massive improvement. But even after all our time together, I'd never taken off my helmet around them. I always ate separately and kept my face hidden. Waylin, we've been fighting together for weeks, and we still don't know what you look like, I said with a pout. Califu agreed. Nessalon laughed and banged on my breastplate. We're not in a dungeon. Relax a little, they were good people. And nobody here knew me. So I pulled off my helmet. Both girls froze. I's spoon clattered into her bowl. Their faces turned bright red. Whatever they'd imagined, apparently I exceeded expectations. Nessalon just laughed. You're way too handsome to hide behind a helmet. I raised my glass awkwardly. To the light goddess. After a few rounds, the girls got a little tipsy. I gathered her courage and asked if I had any engagement arrangements. No, I said. Before she could look relieved, I added, but I'm married. And I love my wife very much. The light in I's eyes dimmed. She sank back in her seat, trying to hide her disappointment. Califu forced a smile too. The cheerful mood shifted. Nessalon broke the silence. Enough talk. Drink. When we get the chance, we'll sail to Norans and visit you. I told them I was leaving in 2 days to catch my trade fleet home before winter. When you come, I'll treat you to the best cream you've ever tasted. The girls managed weak smiles. I asked when I'd be back. I don't know, but I will come back. We'll aim for A rank together. I felt bad seeing them disappointed, but it was better this way. If Yelena ever found out some priestess had feelings for her fiancé, I didn't even want to imagine the consequences. A battlefield of jealous women was the last thing I needed in my life. My lord, you're finally back. I was so worried. Wolfuri had been waiting at the dock, scanning the horizon until he spotted my gleaming armor. I boarded the Pioneer and finally stripped off the heavy gear, changing into soft, noble clothes. The relief was enormous. I let out a long sigh, feeling the weight of the past month dissolve into the wind. Wolfuri reported the trade run earned over 1 million gold coins, though he warned that the cream market was getting saturated. Competitors were trying to copy my product with some puffed fruit and sugar mixture, nothing close to the real thing, since nobody could guess cream came from churning milk. I told him not to worry. Cream was never going to be my only product. In the future, we'd trade weapons and alchemy potions. A single magic weapon or potion was worth far more than cream. With Nasia as my master alchemist, rare potions could go to auction houses for enormous profits. Wolfuri also noticed something different about me. A faint killing edge that wasn't there before. He had sharp merchant instincts. The boy who boarded the ship had come back a man, someone who could sit quietly and project authority without trying. He'd bought livestock, poultry, and crop seeds unavailable in Luiska, including corn, a Rima specialty. Getting it all required the church's travel pass and cost a fortune, but it would help Luiska's development enormously. When the pioneer's silhouette appeared on the horizon, Elyulu and Reyna were already at the dock. They'd been counting the days, waiting there every single afternoon for over 2 weeks. The moment I stepped off the gangway, both girls threw themselves into my arms. I could feel them trembling. I felt genuinely guilty. Disappearing without a word had been wrong, even if I had my reasons. Bringing Reyna along would have defeated the purpose of training. "Master, Elyulu missed you so much," she whispered against my chest, then immediately started checking my body for wounds. Finding none, she relaxed. Reyna was the first to sense I'd changed. Dragon-blooded perception runs deep. She could feel something dangerous about me now, a sharpness that didn't exist before I left. That only made her more upset, because it meant I'd been through something serious without her protection. I just tagged along with the merchants to see Rima. No fighting, nothing to worry about. I lied casually, patting both their heads. Back at the estate, the maids had hot water ready. After 2 weeks on a ship, I desperately needed a bath. I sank into the warm water and groaned with pleasure. Elyulu asked if she could scrub my back. I agreed. She came in with Reyna, both carrying washcloths. They wanted to check for injuries. Finding nothing, my armor had protected me perfectly. Elyulu seemed relieved. Then I felt something warm drip onto my shoulder. Not water from above. When I turned, Elyulu was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. Reyna's eyes were red too. I was confused. What happened? Did someone bully you while I was gone? That was stupid. Who in this territory could bully Reyna? "Master, are you going to get rid of Elyulu?" she asked in a tiny voice. "What? No. Then why did you leave without telling me? What if something happened to you? What would Elyulu do?" Reyna stayed quiet, but her dragon tail was swishing anxiously. She felt the same way. I'd made them cry. Over me. I sighed softly. "I promise. I'll never leave without telling you again." Another winter arrived. My territory now had 3 races: humans, Vastaya, and lizard folk. They didn't exactly get along. There was a natural pecking order between them. But under my authority, nobody acted on their dislike too aggressively. Then Tiwa brought bad news. Underground activity was increasing. The goblins and gnomes were preparing a massive surface raid. These ugly underground creatures always came up to hunt animals and steal from the lizard folk, especially during winter when food ran scarce. In past years, both the Vastaya and lizard folk suffered heavy losses fighting them. Now that both tribes served me, dealing with the goblins became my responsibility. I assembled my forces. 1,000 Mithril elite guards led the charge into the largest goblin cave entrance. 5,000 regular guards followed behind. Another 5,000 guarded the exit to prevent escapes. Vastaya warriors patrolled the skies watching for stragglers. Lizard folk soldiers surrounded every known opening. They'd been waiting years for this payback. The winter timing was perfect. Bare forests gave goblins nowhere to hide on the surface, and griffins circling above made escape impossible. The fighting lasted over a month. We wiped out the vast majority of goblins and gnomes, capturing about 30,000 as future laborers. I had zero guilt about enslaving creatures this primitive. After the fighting ended, I went down to see the underground kingdom myself. Reyna insisted on coming despite my protests. The tunnels were dark and narrow at first, then opened into an enormous cavern that once held nearly 400,000 goblins. Their buildings were pathetic, mud and dried grass slapped together like a child's doodle. Even the Goblin King's palace was disappointing. No stats panel, no real intelligence. Just pure numbers and breeding speed that had tormented the surface races for generations. I was about to leave when Reyna noticed something glinting in the dirt. I dug around it with my mithril sword. A massive vein of silver-white metal emerged from the earth, gleaming under the torchlight. The color, the texture, the mirror-smooth surface. It looked exactly like mithril. I'd need Biglin to confirm the purity, but if this was real, I could barely let myself think about it. A mithril mine would let me equip an army that could make the entire continent tremble. Combined with my griffins, the sky itself would become my battlefield. Speaking of griffins, all 13 eggs had hatched successfully under Ankiyuna's care. The chicks were tiny and pink, completely featherless, mouths gaping for food. Ankiyuna fed them mashed meat with incredible patience. Beautiful to watch. The Vastaya had also brought over 500 griffins when they joined me. These were far wilder than my tamed ones. Even the Vastaya struggled to fully control them, and asking Ankiyuna to handle that many alone was unrealistic. I decided to take it slow. My lord, it's confirmed. Those are real mithril deposits. Biglin rushed to me first thing in the morning, practically vibrating with excitement. He'd gone down to inspect the underground site overnight and confirmed it was a genuine mithril vein. And not a small one. Already 3 times larger than the chunk Yeluna had given me, with more still unexplored. This changed everything. I could forge mithril armor for griffins and warhorses. Where there's mithril, there might be other rare minerals too. This land bordered Norans, after all. I immediately ordered mining to begin, selecting only the most loyal citizens for the work. Guards protected the operation around the clock. Everything was going smoothly, except Yeluna wasn't here this winter. She'd written ahead explaining she had special duties, but I still felt her absence. I'd grown so used to having her around that the days dragged without her. On the bright side, I could focus entirely on training. My combat had reached 65, and even Reyna could spar with me more seriously now. The reason Yeluna was busy turned out to be significant. Every 10 years, the White Elf Empress traveled to the church for a purification ceremony called the Cleansing Festival. The Holy Maiden's presence was required. She had to bathe the Empress in sacred light. This tradition had continued unbroken for centuries. The Empress was named Surind, a legendary figure. She'd been 4th in line for the throne with a commoner father, but her terrifying magical talent and the fact that she'd studied under Grand Mage Uriya carried her to power through the bloodiest succession fight imaginable. She was currently ranked just behind one other human mage as one of the continent's greatest Grand Mages. Interestingly, Uriya had never returned to the White Elf Kingdom since Surind took the throne. Despite Surind's repeated requests for a meeting, Uriya always refused. During the ceremony, Surind noticed that Yeluna had changed since their last meeting 10 years ago. The little girl who barely reached her waist had grown into a graceful young woman. The Empress's sharp elven senses detected something else, a womanly quality in Yeluna's expression. She was in love. Afterward, Surind asked Yeluna about her beloved. Yeluna's carefully controlled emotions cracked just slightly, a flash of joy the Empress barely caught. "He's very handsome," Yeluna said softly. "Golden hair, brown eyes. There's always this gentle slowness in the way he looks at things. When he talks to me, he lowers his voice without realizing it. And when I pretend I didn't hear him, he patiently says it all over again." Surind smiled. How wonderful. As a centuries-old empress, Surind herself had never found a suitable partner. Finding even one acceptable man was difficult for someone of her status, let alone multiple, which elven tradition required for continuing the bloodline. The Elder Council had been pressuring her for years, but she simply wasn't interested in any of the candidates. Just as Surind was about to leave to visit her old teacher Uriya and meet her mysterious new junior student, a familiar voice called from outside. "Yeluna, are you there?" It was Zaluka. While I was busy mining mithril and training, events were unfolding at the church that I'd only learn about later. Zaluka accidentally walked in on Yeluna speaking with the White Elf Empress Surind, a strikingly beautiful woman with silver-white hair and the cold elegance of someone who'd ruled for centuries. Surind was Iria's second student, which made her Zaluka's senior in their master's lineage. Surind had come for the Cleansing Festival, a ceremony held every 10 years where the Holy Maiden bathes the Empress in sacred light. She'd immediately sensed the enormous magical energy surging inside Zaluka, nearly at Grand Mage level already. She was impressed. She asked Zaluka to call her senior sister instead of using royal titles. Then she tried to touch Zaluka's cat ears. My little cat girl dodged instantly and hid behind Yeluna. Nobody touches those ears except me, though of course Surind didn't know that. What Surind really wanted was to see Uriya again. Years ago, she'd given a forbidden magic book to their senior student, Helen Kesha. That book caused Helen's magic to go berserk during an attempt to resurrect his dead wife. Instead of bringing her back, he became the continent's most powerful lich. Uriya had to personally destroy her own student to stop a catastrophe. She'd never forgiven Surind, refusing every visit request for years. Neither Yeluna nor Zaluka knew the full truth. If Yeluna learned that Surind was responsible for her great-grandfather's downfall, she probably wouldn't have performed the cleansing ceremony at all. Zaluka agreed to bring Surin to see Iria at the Magic Academy. She grabbed Yeluna's hand. She needed Yeluna's holy light magic for some research, and the three of them set off together. On the road, even beastfolk soldiers who'd occupied the surrounding territory gave them wide berth when they spotted Yeluna's holy maiden robes. Nobody was stupid enough to provoke the church. Surin was plenty dangerous on her own anyway. She'd once torn apart a bone dragon with her bare hands. While I was focused on mining and training back in Luiska, important things were happening at the church that I'd piece together later. Iria had sensed Surin's presence the moment the Empress set foot in the area. She knew her old students' habits perfectly. Every 10 years, Surin would come for the cleansing ceremony and try to visit her teacher. Every time, Iria refused. But this time, Surin was walking alongside Zaluka, and that made Iria uneasy. She didn't want those two getting close. Zaluka led Surin and Yeluna to the pavilion where Iria usually had afternoon tea. Zaluka bounced up to her teacher and rubbed her face against Iria's cheek, something she apparently did regularly. Iria just tapped her head affectionately. Yeluna greeted Iria next, naturally and warmly. Iria complimented her growth as a holy maiden. Looking at Yeluna always reminded Iria of her first student Helen, Yeluna's great-grandfather. He'd been a goofy kid learning magic at her side, and now even his descendant was nearly grown. Human lives were so painfully short, like shooting stars, beautiful, but gone too fast. Then came Surin's turn. The fearsome empress who'd seized her throne through blood stood there fidgeting like a guilty schoolgirl. Teacher, I'm sorry, she blurted out. Iria's voice went cold. What exactly are you sorry for? Neither spoke for a moment. They both knew what had happened years ago. Surin had given their senior student Helen a forbidden magic book. Helen tried using it to resurrect his dead wife. Instead, his magic went berserk, and he became the continent's most powerful lich. Iria had to kill her own student to stop a catastrophe. She'd never been the same since. Iria didn't press the issue. She sent Zaluka and Yeluna away to practice light magic together. Once they were alone, Iria's tone softened just slightly. Sit down. You used to have more composure than this. They talked. Surin said she was lonely. All her human friends were long dead. Then she got to her real purpose. She wanted to recruit Zaluka. The catgirl's magical talent was extraordinary, and having a future Grand Mage as an ally would help Surin's ambitions enormously. Iria saw through it immediately. You want to recruit another future Grand Mage? Teach her forbidden magic too? Surin winced. I promise I won't let her touch anything forbidden. I just want your permission to try. Iria's response was cool, but clear. You don't need my permission to recruit anyone. Go ahead and try. But if you use any underhanded methods, don't expect me to honor our teacher-student bond. Surin smiled confidently. As long as Iria didn't interfere, winning over that innocent little cat girl would be easy. She clearly had no idea who Zaluka's heart truly belonged to. Things I'd only piece together later were happening at the church while I was busy mining mithril. Yeluna helped Zaluka master light attribute magic by channeling pure healing energy for her. Zaluka was thrilled, hugging Yeluna and thanking her. Now I can get back to master even sooner, she said with a goofy grin. Yeluna froze. She'd basically just accelerated her own romantic rival's progress. She shook it off. Zaluka confirmed she was about 3 years from reaching Grand Mage level, possibly faster. Plenty of people had tried recruiting her, Count Pharaohs, various nobles sending letters, but she threw away every invitation. She only wanted to stay by my side. Yeluna tested her further, warning that Empress Surin would likely offer impressive terms to join the White Elf court. Zaluka's immediate response was to ask how she should politely refuse. She suggested using, "I'm focused on studying magic," as an excuse. Yeluna laughed. What if she promises you rare magic books? Zaluka's ears twitched. That clearly tempted her. Then I'll say I want to stay with my teacher. Sure enough, when they walked Surin to the academy gates, the Empress made her move. She used a gentle, sisterly tone, asking what Zaluka planned after graduating. When Zaluka said she wanted to keep studying magic, Surin dangled the bait. Rare magic books that even Iria didn't have. Zaluka's eyes lit up. Really? You have lots of magic books? Surin smiled warmly and offered to make Zaluka honorary principal of the Elven Magic Academy, giving her unlimited access to their entire library. This was a trap. Accepting would brand Zaluka as part of the White Elf court. Yeluna saw it immediately and stepped in casually. Your Majesty, I'm interested in magic books too. Could I borrow some? Surind politely shut her down. A church holy maiden associating with the elven court would raise eyebrows. But that exchange was enough. Even Zaluka, sweet and naive as she was, caught the hidden message. Yelena was warning her. Zaluka pulled back with a regretful expression. Sorry, senior sister. I want to stay with my teacher for now. Maybe someday I'll visit. Surind hid her disappointment and squeezed Zaluka's hand warmly. Promise you'll come. Definitely next time. After Surind left, Zaluka felt like she'd narrowly escaped a trap. Thank goodness for Yelena's quick thinking. That girl really was going to be wonderful family someday. Though honestly, Zaluka was genuinely interested in those rare magic books. If there was ever a safe chance to look at them, she definitely would. Master, do you really have to go? Elyulu's voice trembled as I prepared for my second trip to Rima. This time I wasn't sneaking away. I'd learned that lesson. I hugged her gently and whispered that I'd come back quickly and stay safe. My breath on her ear turned it bright red. She wanted to hold me longer, but pulled away after just a moment, her heart clearly pounding. Then Reyna burst through the door. Master, I'm coming with you this time. After ditching her last trip, I knew she wouldn't take no for an answer. She looked ready to cry if I refused. Making a girl who loves you cry is a crime. Fine, I agreed. But her white dragon tail was too recognizable. I got dye from Nasia and started coating it black. For some reason, the air around us got really hot while I was touching her tail. Steam actually rose from the dragon scales on her arms, and her face turned completely red. I pretended not to notice. I checked her stats and nearly choked. Her combat had reached 201. Strategy 60, affection a perfect 100. She'd gained sword excellence, the same rare talent I'd only seen on 2 people. Plus white dragon bloodline, dragon scale hardening, frost dragon inheritance. Rated S+. She might be one of the strongest beings on the entire continent. Without battle aura, which only I had, even sword saints couldn't match raw power like hers. I dyed my own armor black too. Silver was too eye-catching for an adventurer trying to stay anonymous. Biglin had custom-made Reyna's armor with space for her tail. Dragon scales were actually tougher than mithril, so the armor was somewhat redundant, but adventurers should look the part. And I definitely wasn't thinking about how incredible an armored dragon girl looked. Definitely not. Back home, everything was running smoothly. The goblin survivors wore slave collars and worked as cheap labor. My citizens could even rent goblin workers for a few copper coins to help with farming. All land belonged to me technically, but anyone who cleared new ground got usage rights. Richer citizens meant higher tax revenue, a win for everyone. My cavalry horses were breeding on their own now, no need to buy more. Ankiyuna had been taming the wild Vastaya griffins steadily. By next year, I estimated I'd have over 1,000 griffins. A griffin cavalry corps was within reach. Standing on the Pioneer's bow with the wind roaring past, I could see the skeleton of a second ship taking shape in the shipyard. By the time I returned, it would probably be finished. Once I had enough ships, I wanted to sail west to the sea race's territory. They supposedly had mermaids. How could I not go see what they looked like? Stepping onto Rima's soil again felt liberating. Here I wasn't a lord, just an ordinary adventurer. I loved that feeling. Reyna was tense, scanning everywhere for threats. Relax, I told her. We're not in a dungeon. I'd registered her as an E-rank adventurer beforehand. As long as a B rank or higher led the party, she could join any mission. At our usual tavern, Nessalon spotted me immediately despite my armor being dyed black. Waylon, over here, his booming voice cut through the noise. Eni and Calipho lit up too. Those two still hadn't given up their little crushes despite knowing I was married. I pulled off my helmet and greeted them. Then they noticed Reyna standing behind me in full armor, her dyed tail swaying. This is Reyna. She's my sister. Sister? Calipho eyed the tail skeptically. I was clearly pure no-rans. Reyna was obviously a demi-human. Half-sister. Same father, different mother. They bought it. Nobles having unusual tastes wasn't exactly rare. They'd seen stranger things. Both girls immediately warmed up to Reyna, especially Eni, who got extra friendly, probably hoping to get closer to me through my sister. While the women chatted, Nessalon leaned in with a conspiratorial look. Waylon, I've got something big. He'd found a pair of earth dragons deep in the ruins. The female had just laid eggs and was weakened. Only the male would be a real threat. Earth dragons were nearly as fierce as griffins, but couldn't fly. They were incredibly agile in mountains and deserts, better than horses in rough terrain. A tamed earth dragon was worth as much as a griffin in Rima. When he mentioned the eggs, my heart jumped. I wanted those. What do you think? Are we doing this? Nessalon asked eagerly. I tapped the table, thinking it over. With Reyna along, we probably wouldn't even need backup plans. But I wasn't going to reveal that. I'm in. But we need proper preparation. He suggested buying strength potions. I told him I'd brought some, about 10 of Neja's potions. That was plenty. Then let's move out now, he said, then turned to the group. Ladies, we've got work to do. He looked at Reyna uncertainly. Your sister, is she ready for this? An earth dragon can beat A-rank adventurers. She's stronger than she looks, I said simply. He glanced at Reyna's quality armor and decided to trust my judgment. I'd never steered the team wrong before. Califu immediately went into big sister mode. Reyna, stay behind me during the fight. I'll protect you. Ian and I chimed in too. Yes, stay behind us. Behind her helmet, Reyna froze. She probably wanted to tell them she could solo the entire mission without breaking a sweat. But she stayed quiet while these two adopted her as their precious little sister. I had no idea what kind of fantasy they'd cast themselves into, but it was pretty entertaining. The whole thing was over before anyone could process what happened. Reyna walked up to the male earth dragon, 3 meters tall, terrifyingly powerful, and knocked it out in minutes. Her white dragon bloodline created such overwhelming pressure on the lesser dragon-blooded creature that it could barely fight back. The weakened female was even easier. My team stood there in shock. They'd been ready for a life-or-death battle, and instead got a 3-minute show. We're rich. Nessalon pinched himself hard. 2 adult earth dragons and 6 eggs. An untamed earth dragon sold for 100,000 gold coins, and paired ones went for even more. The eggs were worth 50,000 each. Together, roughly 600,000 gold coins. Enough for everyone to retire permanently. Ian and I and Califu were still frozen. They'd promised to protect sweet little Reyna. Instead, Reyna had single-handedly completed the entire mission. As team leader, everyone trusted me to divide the loot fairly. I proposed giving Reyna 200,000 for doing the real work, Nessalon 100,000 for finding the target, and splitting the remaining 300,000 equally among everyone. Then I made a request. I'd like to keep the 6 eggs. In exchange, I'll give up my share from selling the 2 adult dragons. This would actually cost me about 40,000 gold compared to an even split, but those eggs were worth far more to me. I could already picture knights riding earth dragons into battle. On the ground, these creatures far outclassed even the finest warhorses. But my teammates refused to let me take the loss. Nessalon shook his head. We're brothers who fight together. I won't let you get cheated. Keep the eggs, and we'll still split the dragon money normally. Ian and I and Califu nodded firmly. They wouldn't take advantage of me either. That warmed my heart. In a world full of betrayal over a few coins, finding teammates this honest was genuinely rare. I was already thinking about recruiting all 3 to Luiska someday. We toasted our victory with overflowing mugs of beer. Afterward, Nessalon went to sell the dragons at Rima's merchant guild. The girls headed to a nearby inn. Reyna and I rushed the 6 eggs back to the Pioneer under cover of night. Once they were safely stored, I let out a long breath. 6 future war mounts, each more powerful than any horse on the continent. Master, did I do well today? Reyna asked shyly, her tail swaying, cheeks slightly pink, eyes full of hope, like a child waiting for praise. I reached out and rubbed her forehead. You did great today, Reyna. She closed her eyes and leaned into my hand, looking exactly like a tamed kitten. News about our team capturing earth dragons spread fast. A B-rank squad taking down creatures that could match griffins? People couldn't believe it. The Adventurers Guild promoted us straight to a rank. We'd gone from C to A in under a year, a speed nobody had seen before. Our fame caught Ainwire's attention. She had her people investigate our backgrounds. Nessalon, Ian and I, and Califu were easy to find. But Weylin and Reyna from Norans, a landless baron's children with possibly no family name, during wartime chaos, impossible to trace. She noticed Reyna was registered as a lizard folk. A knight with a lizard folk sister? Something felt familiar to her, but she couldn't place it. She started thinking about recruiting me into her personal guard. War with Norans was coming. She estimated 2 years before King Ziluk made his desperate move. She needed strong fighters, not to become queen, but to avoid being traded away as a political bargaining chip. One sunny afternoon, I was browsing a blacksmith shop with Ian and I, Califu, and Reyna. E and I needed new leather armor. While they shopped, a tall girl with a golden ponytail caught my eye. My heart stopped. Lena, Baron Fedra's daughter. My former fiancée from another lifetime. She looked completely different. The timid noble girl was gone. In her place stood someone sharp-eyed and dangerous, like a leopard hiding in shadows. Her stats showed combat at 65, strategy at 80, with mastery in swords, shields, and excellence with daggers. Rated A-. She'd clearly fought hard to become this strong. She noticed me staring. I was covered head to toe in armor, so she shouldn't have been able to recognize me. But she walked over with a graceful smile. "Good day, noble knight." Staring at a lady isn't very polite, you know. I bowed and deepened my voice. "Forgive me, beautiful miss. Your elegance caught my eye," she smiled, but it carried a bitter edge. "You think I'm beautiful?" Funny, my fiancée never seemed to think so. I froze inside my armor. She knew. She exchanged pleasantries with my teammates, greeting each one by name. Our squad was famous now. When she reached me last, she said, "Mr. Weilin, a pleasure to meet you," but I'd caught it. Her lips had started to form. "Lin Wei," before switching to Weilin. She picked up a newly forged dagger from the shopkeeper, excused herself politely, and walked toward the door. Sunlight fell on her like scattered gold dust as she stepped outside, her ponytail swaying behind her. After she left, Ian and I asked, "Weilin, how did you know her name was Lena? Did she introduce herself?" I sighed. "Who knows? She probably did. She'd recognized me. I was certain of it. And I'd recognized her the moment I saw her. But some things can't go back to what they were. Like autumn leaves falling from a tree, they don't climb back up the branches. There are 5 main types of dragons: white, red, green, blue, and black. Red dragons are the strongest and most cunning. White dragons are the dumbest. Beyond the basic types, there are variants like frost giant dragons and flame giant dragons. Above regular dragons are ancient dragons and primordial dragons, but those only exist in old books. Recently, an angry red dragon appeared deep in Rima's ruins. So when Ainwire invited our team to join a dragon-slaying expedition, my first reaction was that she'd lost her mind. "If you're asking our entire squad to fight a dragon, Your Highness, I respectfully decline." She tried to sweeten the deal. S-rank promotion, noble titles, 10,000 gold minimum, all weapons provided by the royal family. She'd assembled 13 A-rank teams and 3 S-rank teams. The dragon wasn't even at giant dragon level yet. I was ready to keep refusing, but Nessalon tapped my shoulder. I looked at my teammates. Ian and Califu's eyes were shining. They wanted this. "We'll discuss it," I said. Back at the tavern, we hit our first real disagreement. Nessalon was born for adventure. He couldn't say no to dragon slaying. Ian and Califu had already solved their money problems from the Earth Dragon Hall, but the legend of fighting a real dragon pulled at them. Reyna would follow whatever I decided. The silence stretched while everyone drank. Only Reyna sat there happily eating meat with red sauce all over her face, completely unbothered. "Weilin, are we really not going?" Ian asked first. I tried reasoning with them. "Ian, if something happens to you, what about your sister?" She went quiet, then hardened. "With what I've saved, she can study up to mid-level mage. I want to do this. Nessalon, your wife and daughter," he laughed so loud half the tavern heard. "I chose this life. If I die, I've left them enough to live comfortably forever." Califu didn't speak, but her eyes said everything. Her mother was sick. Her father was a gambling addict who pestered her for money. Life hadn't been kind to her. I looked at each of them. We fought together for a long time. I want every member of the Crimson Squad to retire safely from adventuring. Please think about your families. They went quiet. Finally, they sighed. "All right, Weilin. You're the captain. You're right. Not a single member of Crimson can be missing." Ian raised her glass. "To Crimson. To our adventuring days." Reyna looked up from her plate, confused. "We're not toasting the light goddess today." Nessalon slapped the table. "Not today. There'll be time for that later, after the dragon incident." I gave the team time off. Everyone seemed to need it. Missing a dragon hunt would bother any adventurer. I spent the weeks exploring ruins on my own with Reyna, killing bandits and beasts to sharpen my skills. I tried the slave market too, but nothing impressed me anymore. My standards were too high now. Autumn arrived. My trade fleet would be leaving soon. I wanted one last gathering with the Crimson Squad before heading home. I reserved our usual table at the tavern, ordered everyone's favorite dishes, and a huge barrel of cold beer. Then I went to find E&I at her usual inn. The landlady, a plump woman named Finkel, told me E&I hadn't been back for over 10 days. I thought your squad went on a mission, she said. We hadn't taken any missions in 2 months. Finkel mentioned E&I usually visited her sister for 4 or 5 days at a time. This absence was unusually long. She also mentioned, with a gossip's grin, that E&I always whispered my name during meals. She'd assumed we were a couple. A bad feeling crept into my stomach. I went to Califu's house next. She wasn't there either. Her gambler father was gone too. A neighbor girl was watching Califu's sick mother. The house smelled heavily of medicinal herbs. Her mother was wasted by illness, but you could still see she'd once been beautiful. You must be Waylon. My daughter talks about you all the time. She asked me to remove my helmet. I hesitated, then did. She smiled. She has good taste. Then she asked if I liked Califu. Before I could answer, she continued softly. She knew I was married. She didn't care. Even being a concubine would be fine. She just wanted her daughter to be happy. She told me not to tell Califu about this conversation. She acts tough and mature, but when it comes to love, she's still a clueless little girl. My heart sank. I was already guessing where they'd gone. I couldn't tell this sick woman my suspicions. At Nessalon's house, his wife greeted me warmly. His little daughter was adorable. His wife also assumed we were out on a mission together. I didn't correct her. Walking away, I remembered the tavern gossip about the dragon battle. The expedition had ended days ago. Over half the adventurer teams were decimated. An entire S-rank squad was wiped out. The other 2 S-rank teams lost half their members. I'd been relieved that we didn't participate. Now I realized my teammates might have gone anyway. Reyna noticed my darkening mood and tugged gently at my sleeve. Let's go to the capital, I said. I still had Ainwire's royal token. She would know what happened to the dragon-slaying expedition. As their captain, I had the right to know what became of my squad. I rushed to the royal palace with Ainwire's token. She wasn't happy to see me. She was still annoyed that our squad had refused the dragon hunt. The expedition had been a disaster. The red dragon was far stronger than anyone expected. It had magic resistance so high that it literally devoured 2 grand mages. An entire S-rank team was wiped out. The other 2 S-rank teams lost half their members. In the end, they only managed to wound the dragon before it fled to the mountains near the world's spine, where other dragons, possibly even ancient ones, lived. Now Ainwire worried it might return for revenge. She asked me to help defend Rima if that happened. I gave her a perfectly diplomatic non-answer. All who love this country would stand against such a threat. No oath, no commitment. She smiled thinly, seeing right through me but unable to press further. Walking away with Reyna, my steps felt lighter. My teammates hadn't joined the dragon hunt after all. But then, where had they been for 10 days? Back near E&I's inn, I heard her voice calling my name. She was flushed, having just returned and learned from the landlady that I'd come looking for her. Where were you all? I asked, relieved to see her safe. She explained that the 3 of them had spent over 10 days staking out a rare magical rodent deep in the ruins. They never found it, and came back empty-handed. That was it. Just a failed hunt. Not dragon slaying. I felt foolish for panicking. They'd actually listened to me. I've booked our table at the tavern, I told her. One last dinner before I head back to Norans for winter. Her face fell when she heard I was leaving. She ran off to fetch Califu while I went to get Nessalon. After I walked away, the landlady told E&I something that made everything click. Your captain was really worried about you. With all the dragon commotion, he probably thought you joined that expedition. E&I's eyes went wide. So that's why he'd come looking for her. Not because he had feelings, because he thought she might be dead. She felt a little deflated. But she hadn't gone dragon hunting. She'd kept her promise, partly for her helpless little sister, and partly because she hadn't told me how she felt yet. She decided to wait through winter. Next time I came to Rima, she'd finally gather the courage to confess. When I got back to Luiska, Yelena was already waiting. She didn't scold me. She just quietly helped me out of my heavy armor and gave me a gentle hug. Elyulu and Reyna could only watch with envy. She asked about Rima casually as we walked together. I held her hand, a little worried she might be upset. My palms were rough now from training, calluses everywhere. But she seemed to like the feeling. Heavy. Safe. She'd arrived in autumn and almost went to find me in Rima, but the territory's paperwork had piled up beyond what Shalise could handle alone. So Yelena built an assistant team to help with minor tasks. Looking at Luiska through her eyes as its mistress, she'd found plenty of things to improve. managing the lizard folk in Vastaya, reorganizing finances after I took the mines back from merchants, funding the miners in Biglin's workshop. Biglin had produced 2,000 new mithril armor sets from the underground deposit, even enough extra for Griffin equipment. He believed there was more mithril beneath what we'd already found. If it was a full vein, the possibilities were staggering. At the castle, I took off Yeluna's cloak, hung it up, and pulled her into my arms when nobody was looking. She tapped my forehead but didn't resist. She told me everything she'd done for the territory, then added carefully, "These decisions weren't mine to make. If you mind, I won't overstep again." I shook my head. I could see her affection score sitting at a perfect 100. Everything she did was for me. Even without the panel, I could feel her love as clearly as smelling tea before taking a sip. The mistress of Luiska can do whatever she wants. I fully support you. You don't need to swear oaths to prove yourself. She smiled, warmth filling her eyes. She felt like the luckiest person alive. When winter came, the earth dragon eggs hatched. 6 blue-green hatchlings that could walk from birth, sturdier than baby griffins. They immediately started fighting with the griffin chicks, then teaming up to steal chickens from the neighboring farm. Life had its little routines, but I had bigger things to handle. My guard force had expanded to 100,000 while I was away. Ankro had selected 100 elite soldiers, all with combat ratings above 80. After I verified every one of them through my panel, they became my Griffin Knights, 1 griffin each, the best mithril equipment, better treatment than even my 1,000-man elite squad. In return, they'd be my ultimate assault force in the hardest battles. They'd train intensively and bond with their griffins until the partnership was seamless. Being a lord meant endless work. Sometimes I missed the simplicity of adventuring, just training, fighting, getting stronger. Then I heard something from the tavern that wiped away any lingering nostalgia. A red dragon had attacked the Rima capital. The news about the red dragon attacking Rima's capital was at least a month old by the time it reached me. I'd expected the dragon would seek revenge, just not this quickly. I started worrying about Nessalon, Eni, and Califu, though they lived far from the capital, so they were probably fine. Still, Rima was getting too dangerous. Once winter passed, I'd go back one last time and bring all 3 of them to Luiska with their families. Time to reveal who I really was. My stats had grown nicely. Combat at 70, strategy 88, and I'd gained single-hand sword mastery as a new talent. Without battle aura, I could now fight Ankro evenly, though I suspected he was going easy on me. I still wished I could use magic. Battle aura was powerful but limited to body enhancement. I couldn't shoot it out like a spell. No dramatic explosions, no cool guy walks away without looking back. A real shame. Yeluna and I had been engaged for 2 years now. We'd probably marry next year. We already felt like an old married couple, honestly, but I'd make sure to give her the grandest wedding possible. She deserved nothing less. I just needed to figure out how to handle Grandpa Chjebo. Maybe I'd send some mithril to the church as a son-in-law's contribution. On a quiet afternoon, I finished training and enjoyed tea in the castle. Elialu came to serve me, wearing something too thin for winter. I draped my coat over her shoulders. "Dress warmer. If you get sick, he'll take care of me." She blushed and mumbled a soft yes. I treated her like family so naturally that she appreciated it, but also felt a little frustrated. I clearly didn't see her as a romantic interest. She'd been by my side since childhood. By normal standards, she should have been mine long ago. Chalice brought me a letter from Duke Simon, Elialu's father. It was full of flattery and softened language. Life clearly wasn't easy for the Noran's nobles. The country was now split between the dogmen controlling most of the territory and a new noble alliance rumored to include the first prince. Simon's letter asked that even if Elialu never returned to him, she keep using the Simon family name. He also warned that King Ziluk XIII might be planning something soon. I asked Elialu if she wanted the Simon name back. She refused without hesitation. I dropped it. I tossed the letter on the table and sank into the sofa. Elialu quietly came around behind me to massage my shoulders. One more trip to Rima after winter. Then I'd end my adventuring career for good. I felt drowsy and drifted off right there on the couch. When I woke up later, my head was resting on Elialu's lap. She'd slipped her knees under me while I slept. I woke up from my nap to Biglin shouting my name. My head was still foggy, and I realized I'd been sleeping on Elialu's lap. She was smiling down at me softly. No wonder it felt so nice and fragrant. That milky scent of hers was dangerously pleasant. Different from Yeluna's delicate floral fragrance, but I liked both. Biglin was practically dancing with excitement. "My lord, there's a confirmed mithril vein below. And we found red mithril." He held up a chunk the size of an adult's fist, glowing red. Red mithril is an ultra-rare mineral that only forms inside massive mithril deposits. It's a superconductor. Any magic or battle aura channeled through it gets amplified dramatically. It's also 3 times harder than regular mithril. Even a grain-sized piece sells for astronomical prices. A fist-sized chunk was beyond any price tag. If the continent's mages learned I had this, they'd sell everything they owned to buy even a sliver. Thank goodness Biglin's loyalty was at 100. Anyone else would have stolen it and disappeared. "What reward do you want?" I asked him. He turned red as a beet. "My lord, I'd like a dwarf woman." I almost laughed. Fair enough. The man worked tirelessly and had plenty of money now. I promised to buy some dwarf women from the slave market so he could pick one he liked. I gave Biglin his orders for the red mithril. 15 wands and 2 weapons, a longsword for me and an oversized scythe for Reyna. I sketched the scythe design on parchment. A dragon girl wielding a massive crimson scythe? The aesthetic was perfect. Biglin worked at incredible speed, motivated by his upcoming reward. He produced 10 wands with grain-sized red mithril fragments, 20% magic boost, 3 wands with fingernail-sized pieces, 50% boost, and 2 premium wands with bottle cap-sized chunks, nearly doubling a mage's output. The scythe used the most red mithril, nearly a third of its composition, with the rest being pure mithril. Absurdly luxurious. When I handed it to Reyna, the weapon was devastatingly heavy, but she swung it effortlessly. The oversized blade left dark red afterimages in the air. It looked almost comically large against her small frame, but somehow that contrast was beautiful. "Name it, Reyna." She looked at me hopefully. "You name it, Master, Red Moon." The crimson blade, the silver handle, the name came naturally. The 2 best wands I reserved for my 2 most important women. One for Yelena, one for Zaluka. I'd never favor one over the other. The next tier down. One for Grand Mage Aria, one for Grandpa Tjebo, and one for Narancel. I'd been promising him rare magic books I never found, so a premium wand was the least I could do. He'd been loyally training my mage corps for years. The remaining wands I'd save for the future. Gifts like these were perfect for winning people's hearts when the time was right. Zaluka had been training non-stop since Ainwire left the academy. Without the constant interruptions, her progress had accelerated dramatically. She was getting close to Grand Mage level. Aria called her over one day with an odd look on her face. "Your little Viscount keeps getting more impressive. I can understand the church having mithril, but a wand made with red mithril? That's something else entirely." Her tone was slightly sour. The wand I'd sent her had a fingernail-sized piece of red mithril, genuinely valuable and generous. But Zaluka's had a much larger piece, nearly doubling her magical output. Aria understood why mine was bigger for Zaluka, but it still stung a little. She joked to herself about whether staying single all these centuries had been a mistake. Zaluka's face lit up the moment she heard the gift was from me. She cradled the meter-long wand like it was the most precious thing in the world. Aria explained how red mithril amplifies magic, but slowly gets consumed with each powerful spell. She told Zaluka not to be stingy with it. I clearly had access to a mithril mine, so money wasn't a concern anymore. As one of Luiska's future mistresses, don't penny pinch, Aria teased. Zaluka's face turned bright red. Aria shook her head privately. The position of primary wife was already locked down by someone else, but at least my little cat girl would be well taken care of. Meanwhile, at the church, Grandpa Tjebo was in his private room studying forbidden magic behind soundproof barriers. When a bishop arrived carrying my gift box, stamped with the Luiska bluebird crest, the old man's face darkened immediately. "From Linway? Throw it away." He smacked the box off the bishop's hands. The red mithril wand rolled across the floor, its deep crimson crystal catching the sunlight. The bishop's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. Tjebo froze. He stared at the wand on the ground, a fingernail-sized piece of red mithril, one of the rarest materials in existence. He coughed awkwardly. "I meant throw away the box." He snatched up the wand in a flash. Then he looked at the box with my family crest on it and reconsidered. Throwing away his grandson-in-law's thoughtful gift wrapping would be rude, wouldn't it? He grabbed the box too. "Well, the boy isn't completely useless, I suppose." That chunk of red mithril was worth far more than the mithril block Yelena had taken from the church treasury. The old man's attitude shifted instantly. What else do we have in the warehouse? Luiska is still developing. Send them wheat, soybeans, corn, whatever we've got. And priestesses. Send more priestesses over there. The bishop stood there in stunned silence, watching the old man's face flip like a switch. Winter finally ended. My training with Ankro had pushed me further than I ever imagined. I could fight him evenly now without battle aura, and his combat rating had crossed 100. My own stats had transformed beyond recognition. My combat was 80. Strategy 89. I'd reached high-level battle aura warrior and gained single-hand sword mastery. Hard to believe I started at 5. Over winter, my battle aura broke through to high level. When I channeled it through my red mithril sword, even Reyna didn't dare block head-on. She admitted she genuinely felt threatened, and dragonfolk perception doesn't lie. My forces were enormous now. 100,000 human guards, 50,000 lizardfolk soldiers, the Vastaya tribes on standby. 100 griffin knights soaring freely with full mithril armor, mithril swords, and heavy longbows. 400 more griffin riders were in training. 6 months, and I'd have 500. The earth dragons were growing fast too, breeding much quicker than griffins. Once a full dragon cavalry emerged, regular heavy cavalry from Rima or Yade wouldn't stand a chance. A second great ship was finished and sailing. Between my two territories, the mine, the trade routes, everything was clicking into place. I just needed one opportunity to connect both Luiska territories by taking the land between them. Noriel kept writing from the barony suggesting exactly that, but the timing wasn't right yet. I'd wait for Norans to implode first, then move in the chaos. When spring arrived, I prepared for one final trip to Rima. This time, Yeluna insisted on coming along. I just want to see what you do there, she said calmly, already having arranged a griffin escort for when she needed to leave for church duties. I couldn't argue. Wolfuri was terrified. Serving under me was one thing. Having the legendary Holy Maiden aboard was another. He noticed what I already knew. Yeluna's eyes were warm and loving when looking at me, but turned cold and distant toward everyone else. She hid it well, but a merchant's instincts caught every flicker. The voyage was pleasant. Maybe too pleasant. With both Yeluna and Reyna beside me, life aboard felt more like vacation than an adventure mission. I had to remind myself I came here to fight, not relax. The moment I stepped off the ship, that reminder hit hard. The area around the Adventurers Guild had been completely destroyed by the Red Dragon's attack. Flattened to rubble. Ian Eisen was right near the guild. So were Nessalon's and Califu's homes. Walking through the ruined streets of Rima with Yeluna and Reyna, I saw the devastation the Red Dragon had left behind. Children crying in the rubble. People staring blankly at destroyed homes, wondering whose loved ones were buried underneath. The Adventurers Guild, the place where my whole journey here began, was the worst hit. Burnt walls, collapsed buildings. The dragon had targeted it first. Ian Eisen was gone. Nothing but wreckage. I closed my eyes. Her cheerful face floated up in my mind. The tavern owner. Landlady Finkel. All the familiar faces, waving goodbye like it was just yesterday. I told Yeluna and Reyna to wait on the ship. Yeluna just nodded quietly. I'll wait for you. I went to Califu's house first. Her neighborhood was mostly intact. The door was half open, the smell of medicine thick inside. Her mother answered weakly. She looked worse than before. Much worse. The moment she saw me, tears started falling. Califu, my daughter. She died in battle. I stood there in silence. I'd always pretended not to notice how Califu and I felt about me. But she was my friend. A good one. And now she was gone. Her mother pulled a small crimson badge from under her pillow. Califu's Crimson Squad medal, with a tiny character engraved on it. It felt impossibly heavy in my hand. I offered to take her mother to Norans to live. She refused gently. This was her home. Califu had left enough money. She thanked me and asked nothing more. I closed her door carefully behind me and decided to have Wolfuri check on her whenever the trade fleet came through. Then I walked to Nessalon's house, the farthest from the attack zone. Life here seemed untouched. Merchants, travelers, extra guards. When I saw his little daughter Lalami playing in the yard, my chest loosened. I knelt down and took off my helmet. Lalami remembered me. Her face lit up. The handsome big brother. Mama. Mama. Is Daddy coming home too? His wife Alwa came out looking exhausted. She sent Lalami to play and turned to me. But I already knew. Lalami had asked when her father was coming back. Alwa told her he was a great dragon-slaying hero. and he'd return when the Rima flowers bloomed. She'd given the little girl a seed to grow, Daddy's favorite flower. The seed was red. Rima flower seeds are green when alive. Red means they've been cooked. A dead seed will never bloom, no matter how much love a little girl pours into it. I hadn't asked a single question yet. The seed had already given me the answer. Alwa told me what happened. When the red dragon attacked during winter, Nessalon heard the news and rushed straight to the disaster zone. The city guards later told her he died fighting. She understood. That was the fate of an adventurer. He'd left enough gold for her and Lalami to live comfortably forever. But she worried that people who knew about his Earth Dragon earnings would come after the money. I promised her that no one would bother them. Any member of the Crimson Squad deserved protection. She handed me Nessalon's Crimson badge without another word and went back inside. Little Lalami bounced over when I waved to her. Handsome big brother. Mama says I should call you uncle, but I like brother better. She was adorable. She looked like her mother, thankfully, not Nessalon's rough face. She asked if I'd come play with her again. We made a pinky promise. Back on the ship, Yelena could tell I wasn't okay. She held me quietly and let me process everything. Reyna stood nearby in silence. She understood too. Califu and Eni had both treated her like a little sister. I had one more visit to make. Eni's younger sister Cynthia studied at Rima's Magic Academy, far from the destruction. She was 13, wrapped in an oversized mage robe, and clearly didn't want to see me. Her talent was genuinely impressive. An apprentice mage at 13 took real dedication. She was cold toward me. Her sister had been buried under the rubble near the guild. All Cynthia found were blood-stained leather armor and personal items. She knew I was the man her sister had loved. Once, she'd wanted to meet me. Now she wasn't so sure. I told her to come to me if she ever needed help. She said nothing, just handed me a letter and Eni's crimson badge, scorched but carefully cleaned. Then she left. I opened the letter. Waylon, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. I wrote this hoping it would never be needed. But if you're reading it, you should at least know how I feel. I love you. I wanted to marry you and have lots of children. You said you loved your wife, but I fell for you anyway. Maybe you think that's shameless, but I can't control my heart. And no, it's not because you're handsome. Don't think I'm that shallow. From the day you joined Crimson, I knew you were kind. We'd had other frontliners before, but none as careful as you. You always watched where Califu and I were standing. You noticed what food I liked. Thanks to you, I became a picky eater. You must be an angel the light goddess sent me. When winter ends, I'm going to tell you how I feel. Am I being too greedy? If we end up together, I'll still give you this letter. Just don't laugh at me, okay? Otherwise, I'll show you that a priestess's wand isn't just for healing. The letter was short. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. At that moment, for the first time, I wanted to slay a dragon. Slaying a dragon was never going to be easy. Ainwire's failed expedition proved that. From what I pieced together, the reason she'd used adventurers instead of Rima's royal forces was pure ambition. She wanted the glory for herself. If she'd asked King Charlie for the Royal Mage Corps, hundreds of high-level mages, over a dozen master mages, and 5 or 6 grand mages, they would have killed that dragon easily. But then the credit wouldn't have been hers alone. Her greed caused the disaster. She underestimated the red dragon's magic resistance. 3 grand mages went in, and the dragon ate 2 of them alive. Regular soldiers and adventurers couldn't break through dragon defenses without battle aura, which no one in this world had any more except me, or advanced alchemy, which Rima lacked compared to Yade. They did manage to destroy one of the dragon's eyes with magic, turning it into a one-eyed dragon. But it escaped and came back for revenge, smartly avoiding the city walls with heavy crossbows and targeting the undefended areas instead. Now Ainwire was facing serious backlash. Nobles and commoners blamed her for provoking the dragon twice. Only her brothers Reese and Peter speaking up for her, plus her connection to Zaluka, a future Grand Mage, kept King Charlie from punishing her. Meanwhile, Ainwire went to her succubus alchemy teacher Shandy for guidance. The dragon problem was eating at her. She kept making basic mistakes during experiments. Shandy noticed and told her simply, "Focus on your alchemy. I'll think of something about the dragon." Ainwire was confused. Usually her teacher would hand her some insanely powerful potion. This time, just a vague promise? She didn't get her hopes up. What Ainwire didn't know was that Shandy had someone specific in mind. She'd been out of touch with her girlfriend for a while, a woman named Bidey, whose power was beyond question. Bidey had tamed an ice dragon that was nearly at the giant dragon level. If that red dragon hadn't reached giant dragon class, it stood absolutely no chance against Bidey. And Bidey happened to be someone I knew quite well. She'd saved my life once with that pendant she gave me.